Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Nice to be here. Hi everybody. Good to be back. We're doing another podcast. Welcome to Crier Media. Welcome to the Dean Blundell Show. My name is Dean. We have a busy show for everybody today. Very Canada-centric. We're going to be in Ukraine a little bit today as well. And we're going to start out in Edmonton, Loch Lacrosse. My co-host, as always, 957 Cruise FM in Edmonton. You're not my co-host. We're co-hosts, by the way. I hated when people do that.
Yeah.
In radio. It's like, I'm the host, you're the co-host. No, we're co-hosts.
Well,
hosting.
Technically, it's your show.
Correct.
I would be the co-host.
It's just because my name is on it. But neither of us matter today. None of us.
No, this show has nothing to do with us, and I'm actually very thank you first off for letting me be a part of this one. One of the more interesting things that has happened to me since I've been on this podcast, we're closing in on 3 years. You know that, 18?
No, are you going to say when you got your first adult circumcision last year? Is that the most interesting part of it?
No. It's your you introduced me to Alex from Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I mean, we've met lots of people on this podcast, lots of very interesting people, but hands down, one of my favorites is Alex, who is in Ukraine, who chose against all odds and against probably everyone else's, better judgment, to stay and help out because he felt like he needed to do something to help his country in the war that they're fighting right now. Mm-hmm. And we have had him on now, like dozens of times in the last couple of years since this war started.
A
year and a half. And I look forward to every time. And I love the guy. And I think the listeners of this podcast love him too.
Dude. One of the great reactions we get every time we do this podcast, specifically live, and this is live recorded today. Everybody's going to see this a couple hours after we do it. There's
some reasons behind recording though. Like say that out loud.
Yeah. We want to make sure that we get this done right. And in the reaction that Alex gets, Alex de Rebeckoff, of course, our war correspondent, we hooked up with him a couple of years ago, really day 2 of the war. And he joins us now. Alex de Rebeckoff, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, does your head get big? Like, do you get like all embarrassed when we're talking about you and stuff?
Oh, yeah, kind of.
He's a little shy.
Thank you so much. So kind words.
Oh, buddy, we love you. Great to see you.
We love having you on, man.
Oh, man, totally. You've enriched our lives. You've given us a real view into the way the people of Ukraine have been able to fend off what we've seen over the last almost 2 years now. And it's funny because everybody goes around and they have opinions on what goes on in foreign countries. We just go to the foreign country, get someone there to tell us the truth who's involved in it all the time. But your bravery is incredible, as are your resources. One of the most resourceful guys I've ever met in my life. Now, I'm going to introduce this gentleman because, and then you guys can kind of have a chat. There was a connection to the war early on that really became a Canadian Ukraine story. It became this story of myth and legend. And I was introduced to the legend of this Canadian sniper at the start of the Ukraine war via a picture. This picture, I'm going to put it on the screen for everybody, of this gentleman who is walking through the airport. And this gentleman, this is day 2 or day 3, one of the world's best snipers has arrived in Ukraine. French-Canadian Wali from the Royal Canadian 22nd Regiment has made his reputation during tours in Afghanistan, Syria, and Iraq. He fought in the same Canadian unit as the sniper with the world's longest kill, 3.5 kilometers. And it was on. It was like this, like, we have one of those. Like we've got a sniper with a story. Now, you hooked up with Wali, correct? Like, and when you found him, your goal was to get him on our show after you hooked him up, correct?
Yeah,
exactly. Because I'm still in European, and being in European, I'm interested in all the stories connected with the city, and of course, Wally has been a hero here in the first weeks of the war, and I read so many things on the internet, and I saw interviews with people who knew Wally, and then I saw an interview with Wally, and I was like, okay, I'll write to him on Facebook, and then he replied, and I was happy to introduce Dean and your show to him, and I was so happy that he agreed to participate.
What a crazy world, right?
Yeah.
Like, just like wrap your head around that.
Yeah.
You're in Ukraine, you live there, you're dealing with this on a daily basis. A Canadian who goes over to help is a sniper, world renowned, and you hook up with him on Facebook, and we're about to introduce him and have a conversation with him. It's just bizarre. Like, I can't be alone in that.
No, you're not. You know, the internet's given us terrible things, like 80% of it is porn. But sometimes it hits a home run, right? Please welcome to the program, legendary Canadian sniper, altruistic individual, one of the nicest guys I've ever had the pleasure of having a pre-prep conversation with. Ladies and gentlemen, the most deadly sniper in the world, Wali, is here. Hey, oh, hey, oh. How do you like that?
Not bad, not bad. You see my Ukraine flag there?
I do.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And by the way, it's a painting. It's a original. Me and my wife, we paid an artist, local artist. So it's obviously the colors of Ukraine, but it's a field. You see there's some flowers represent the family, because I have kids. I have 2 kids, wife, dog, and you see. I like this picture. It's so peaceful. Because we know Ukraine as a war place, but it's also. It used to be a peaceful place, and I hope it's going to be a peaceful place in the future. But it's so beautiful at the same time. But I've seen people dying in this kind of setup, right? And this place is, you see the tree lines. People were killed there. Right now, as we speak, there are people on the front line in trenches in this kind of landscape, and they're just getting smashed by artillery, tanks, and many stuff. So it's a peaceful image, but at the same time it represents pain and bad stuff that happens in Ukraine every day. So it's but thanks for the invitation, by the way.
Oh man, pleasure. And just a quick aside, a lot of Russian fertilizer under some of those beautiful flowers as well.
Yeah, it's true. It's lots of people, they're dying, including Russians, and in a way I don't hate Russians, and the first time I went there at the beginning of the war, in the first few days, I was thinking it was some kind of honorable war. Okay, the Russians, they just want to take territories, they claim some stuff, but it's just like, let's say, First World War, so they want to take a bunch of territories, but they don't hate Ukrainians. That I was thinking that, and I was saying to the Ukrainians, I don't believe in all this propaganda about the Russians hating the Ukrainians, and I was saying maybe it's just propaganda. And I remember I went to the first time I went into the battlefield, not far from Alex, by the way. We went into a place not far from the river, because the Russians were all pushing everywhere. We were almost out of the city and on the other side of the river, but this Ukraine commander, he spread out a map, on the pool table, artillery falling everywhere, and almost surrounded by all the Russian forces. And he said, we have information that the Russians are killing people there, and then we think they're doing some bad stuff against civilians there. And my first reaction was, okay, it can't be true. It must be some kind of propaganda, And it was saying, no, it's true. We have information. And then we learned, when we won this first battle of Kyiv, that it was not fake. It happened, like Nazis during Second World War. There were crimes there. So yeah.
So yeah, what did you do? See, that you can't stop there. You can't, this is incredible, because you were in the theater, you were there, and Alex is from Irpin, right? Alex is from the place that you and the Norman Brigade and the first Ukrainian warriors went in to clean up or try and get rid of, but the atrocities had already happened. Is that how you hooked up with Wali, Alex? Like, how did you guys get to know each other? And then we'll kind of go back into the early days, as you said, and some of the more horrific stuff.
Oh, actually, I'm documenting the war crimes eyewitnesses, and that's how I got connected with Wali. But yeah, I was there in the beginning of the war, and I can share what Wali just said, that I also didn't believe that Russians, were so bad. I was like, okay, that is just a spontaneous or incident that happened, that they shot somebody. But then it turns out that it was very systematic. It looked like they were given orders to kill civilians. So, and I can prove it by many witnesses that I personally talked to.
And is that so? When you go through the Wally, as you point out, you go there with like, hey, this is just one country versus another country. I don't hate Russians, and then you get that phone call when you get inserted into Irpin, and we'll get to what that's like in just a second. So you are very well aware of these atrocities, like you've seen these atrocities.
No, not at that point. In the first few,
not at the beginning,
of the war, I was thinking, okay, this is maybe it happened a few times, the crimes and everything, but there's no hatred. But the first, I would say, sign that something was wrong with the Russians is the fact that they were saying that people like me, the foreign fighters, we were like terrorists, that we were not, legitimate, fighters. So I was, that's weird. That's a sign that they are arrogant, that they think that they're going to win so easily, that they claim that they can kill pretty much everybody, and they don't recognize that the people fighting against them are just, they might be even the foreign fighters, they might be legitimate. So that was the first sign. Okay, that's pretty intense, because I'm used to fight against, let's say, Taliban. I'm used to fight against ISIS, this kind of soldier who, if they get me, they're gonna torture me, they're gonna do very bad things with people like me, So the Russians, I was seeing them as just normal soldiers, professional soldiers. They would not like torture me, they would not do bad stuff against me. They would not the army, maybe a few incidents. So that was the first sign. And by the way, the first patrol, the first real patrol we did in Irpin, the mission was to find the Russian position, because it was like troops. There was a no man's land. In war, sometimes what happens is that you have troops, but sometimes it's so dangerous to be close by that sometimes they go away from each other, because if they get so close, they're gonna just shoot, and there's gonna be like there's going to be an outcome so quick that sometimes everybody is pulling back, and then there's a gray zone, okay, what we call sometimes the no man's land. And our first mission was to go with small teams and just do reconnaissance stuff. Where are the Russians, so we can plan more assaults, we can take territories, we can plan the next phases. And we went on such mission, we were 6 guys, and we went out in this no man's land. And it was crazy, because it felt like apocalypse. There was burning houses, but usually with the burning houses, you have firefighters, you have police, you have this kind of, it's just people trying to fix the fire. And now it's just burning stuff, houses with most of the time nobody in them. There were a few refugees, but most of the time they were hidden. But it felt like a zombie movie. So you see this. Let's say you walk, and then there's a destroyed car, let's say, and then there's a burning house. It's so quiet, when you are in no man's land. There might be Russians anywhere. You push into, a bit like you push towards the enemy, what you think might be the location of the enemy, and then you push into this gray zone, this no man's land, and it's so quiet. It's you just have the fires, and then sometimes you hear chainsaws. Chainsaw people cutting woods in the cities, which is crazy. Sometimes you used to have this kind of noise in the countryside. Back in Canada, let's say, you have this chainsaw noise, and you don't have this in the middle of the sea, right? But in Irpin, you can hear, let's say, a chainsaw, and then you have this burning house, so quiet, like a zombie apocalypse. And then you move forward. We went into a building, and at some point we got almost encircled by Russians. There were maybe 50 Russians, maybe 30, or there were lots of them, because they were shooting everywhere. We were just 6 guys, And at some point we had to pull back. At least the good thing is that we knew they were there. So reconnaissance mission in a way was a success, and we used this information later on for the planning of the next missions. But at that point, I was thinking, okay, I had the same mindset as when I was fighting against ISIS or the Taliban. Okay, there's no way I can get captured by these guys because they might just kill me on the spot, right? I'm tourist, I'm foreigners. So it's the first time, when I learned about the Russians saying that people like me were terrorists. That I thought, okay, maybe the Russians are not that much vulnerable. Maybe they're going to do crimes. Maybe they're going to be bad. And now we know that's what happened, right?
I have a question, and I don't want to sidetrack us from the storyline, but can you give us a quick idea, Wally, about why you would do this? I mean, most people that live in Canada, a wild majority would never think about going over to Ukraine to put themselves into harm's way. Is there a simple explanation for your volunteer?
Yes, well, this is such a simple question. Everybody's asking the same question. Why are you doing this? And for me, it's so obvious that it's hard to answer, because it's like you ask, let's say, a doctor, why are you helping this guy, with health trauma? It's like, and the answer is going to be, well, I'm a doctor, so I'm able to help, so why not help? It's as simple as that. There's somebody in danger, and you have the means to maybe make a difference, so why not help? And so I'd say it's fate. I'm a Christian, so I think we should help each other. That means protecting people that are attacked by other people, and yeah, that means as a sniper, professional sniper with experience, that means if I have to go to countries such as Ukraine and try to make a difference, then that means I'm probably gonna do it.
That's incredible. I mean, and we'll get to the origin story of what makes a guy, tell his wife, "Hey, I think I gotta go."
Yeah.
Right? Well, and like a few weeks before his son's first birthday, where she's like, "Dude,
Yes. I was on my way to actually to Kyiv in the train, and surprisingly, the trains were working. And I think the reason is because the Russians were thinking, okay, we're gonna get that country so quick that we must preserve the resources, and that means the train and some, nice places, infrastructure basically. So surprisingly, I went to Kyiv by train. It was very hard to get out of Kyiv, but it was not so hard to get into Kyiv. So I went from Dnipro, which is pretty much in the middle of the city, a bit more east, on the river, and I went to Kyiv by train, and the train was pretty much empty. So it felt like a Second World War train. It was the old type of, a train with woods and no lights inside the train. And there were some medical equipment in the train loaded by the guy, the operator of the trains. And it's funny because we went into the train and all these refugees coming out of the train, and then they were loading, refugees coming out and people just getting out of the war zone, Kyiv. And then as we enter with all the, the bags, me and my colleague, Shadow nickname, the guy was like talking in Russian, I think, or Ukrainian. He said something like, "That's Kyiv. Why are you boarding this train? It's going back into Kyiv." He's like, "Don't do it." I felt like he was saying something like that. And I said, "Yes, we're going to Kyiv." And then he looked at the backpacks and everything. He was like, "Okay, now I understand." And he said, "Okay, you can come on board." But it felt special to be like this kind of setup. And then at night, I think it was maybe, 11, at night, as we were going in the dark towards Kyiv in this train with full of medical supplies, I had a call with my families, and because it was the birthday of my son, so it was the first anniversary. So it felt like I was like a ghost, like a dead person ghost, and I was looking at this daylight because it was daylight in Canada. So I was looking on my cell phone, and it was night in me. I had this flashlight, and I didn't know where I was for security reason. I was not sharing this kind of detail from my family. So I could be anywhere. I could be in a trench, could be in the city, I was on a train. So, and it was daylight, for this event with my family. I saw the snow, around the house and everything. And I was in this war situation, and I felt like a ghost looking, at that person, looking at the family that he left behind. It felt that way. And yeah, so that was the when I entered Kiev, by train by night, and then eventually, I think it was 2 days after, I went into the battle itself, because Kiev was encircled, but it wasn't like the battle everywhere in Kiev. The front line was around Kiev, and one of the places was a city called, now that we know, Irpin and Bucha, but Bucha is like I would say maybe, I don't know, 20 kilometers maybe from Kiev on the northwest, and it's a place where typically there are lots of IT person there. I work in IT, by the way. That's my other lives, but they are people with dacha. They call it dacha. It's basically country houses, and lots of Ukrainians went to these places, Irpin and Bucha, because it looks on the map. When you look at the map, it looks like it's going to be away from the battle. It's on the west side, and it looks like a good place to just protect yourself. And lots of Ukrainians who had country houses went to these places, Irpin and Bucha, to get protection, because it felt like it was away, from the front line. But then the Russians, as we know, attacked from the north, from Belarus, and for that reason, it was actually the worst place to be, at some point, because that's the place where the Russians tried to encircle the city. But yeah.
Jesus. So that was your first mission? Your first mission was in Irpin?
Yes.
After you leave Kiev?
Yes. So the first battle I did, the first deployment I did in Ukraine.
Alex's hometown, by the way. That's where he's talking to us from. He's in Irpin. You liberated his hometown. Yeah.
Yes, that's crazy. Yeah, that's so crazy to think about it. And then the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, went into the Irpin, I think maybe a month after, and maybe and many others, president and actors and a bunch of people. And I remember that I was thinking, it's an achievement to think that you literally liberated, helped liberated, because I was not alone in that situation, in this battle. But I took part in the liberation of a city, and then my own Prime Minister went into this city a few weeks after. So I think it's an achievement. And when he asked question about what happened, when you went into Kiev, you went into the Battle of Irpin, you went into this. I'll try to be brief, because there's so many details that I don't talk about because we don't have time.
Dude, don't be brief.
Talk about this all day long.
Hit it. Let's go.
Don't be brief. I'll try. But even 3 hours, sometimes I do a podcast and I can talk for hours, and still I try to squeeze, because there's so many things we can talk about. There's so many details. There's so many feelings. There's so many things that, that are not true about me. Sometimes I read about articles or videos and stuff, and I must say that it's like reading somebody else's story. It's like, it's not me. I feel like, okay, this Wali did this, and then he was thinking this and this and this, and it's like, who is that Wali? That's not me. It's not true. I would say 90% of the things are either false or just exaggeration, on the good and the bad side. So, but it's part of the deal, right? Distortion. It's okay. I deal with it, but
distortion's the best in a theater of war. Like, a couple quick questions. Russia reported that they killed you. True or false?
It's true that they did report it, and that's the official agency. It's TASS.
But you're not dead. Like, you're here, so
no, I can say. I can say something. Well, now we can fake. There's going to be people saying that we can fake, me talking like this with AI. I work in IT, so I know how to achieve that. But there's what we call deep fakes, by the way. So deep fakes is like a video of me, let's say, talking and saying, "Oh, I'm not dead," because I can see the dates, I can see stuff that happened recently. But to be honest, now with technologies, it might be possible to have, let's say, I don't know, Hitler or Elvis Presley now on the podcast and talking like I do now and answering questions. So technically it's possible to achieve that. And
Even
by
if
the
you're
way, that's a side
AI, I
note.
think a nice little to Pootlers, you know. Yeah, I hope he sees this.
Yeah, so I guess I'm well, the Ukrainians, they taught me a few words because I went into Ukraine not knowing the language, no time for that. So I just rushed into Ukraine because I knew time was an issue. So speed of execution was more critical than perfection of execution. I had just to rush to the front because this kind of warfare the country could have collapsed in just a few weeks, you know? So I just rushed to the front line, and then I had to learn basically on the battlefield the first few words. And the first
Crazy.
few words of Ukraine was Putin hoida, and I'm pretty sure Alex know what that means. But
What does
it
it
made
mean?
me practice Putin hoida. Maybe Alex can explain
Alex, hit us. What is it?
but I don't think it's a good thing about Putin.
Putin is a dick.
I was gonna
Yeah.
say it has to be a penis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny? Because when I went to Afghanistan, I remember the kids in the village. They make me practice the profession of faith. And now I can say, and by the way, there are people thinking I'm Muslim because I might look like a Muslim. I'm not, by the way. But they made me practice the profession of faith for the Muslim. But in Ukraine, they make me practice putting hula. So it's a different kind of situation.
How many people did you enter the front lines with? It sounds like that trip from Kyiv into Irpin may have been very solitary. It doesn't sound like there was a lot of people on that train with you.
No.
With all the medical supplies.
The train was on the south, so it was basically the only lines still available. From maybe southwest also a bit, but the south of the city was the place where everybody was going out at that point because Russians were sort of all around the city pretty much. And so I went into the Kyiv first, but this part was just going as I had no weapons. I was just as a guy with this intent of joining the battle, but still I wasn't it was me on the train and Shadow, this other Canadian. And then
Shadow was your guy. Shadow was your assistant.
Yes,
this is the gentleman
exactly,
that
yes.
I'd watched an interview with him. That's him. He was like, that Wally's the greatest. I can't believe I got to work with Wally. Saved my life. He's tried to save everybody's life. He's the greatest warfare guy I've ever met. That interview on YouTube, by the way, Shadow on Wally, you got to go watch it. So that's who you're talking about. That's the guy that you went with.
Yeah, Shadow. So it was his first experiment, by the way. So he was in the Navy, but no experience with any kind of warfare. So it was pretty a nice first experience to be fighting tanks with guided missiles and such. But anyway, that's something we can talk after. But when we entered Kyiv, it wasn't like we were joining the battle right away. So at first we just went to the train station in Kyiv, the main one. And surprisingly, it wasn't bombed. It wasn't targeted. And at that point, there were some air defense, but not that much. So the Russians, they were flying overhead. They can do pretty much anything that they wanted, almost. But surprisingly, this train station was still in good shape, the main one. And then we were grabbed by some special forces soldiers, snipers. And one of them was wounded a few days after on some patrol in Irpin, but at that time we didn't know that. So we went into this truck, and then we went. Now I can say it. At that time I could not, because obviously I didn't want to reveal any tactical details, right? But the first mission was just maybe 2 days, I think. We were just defending an airport. So the airport was maybe the Russians would use this airport to just assault the airport and then drop lots of equipment, So we had to guard this airport because they were doing it. They were doing it in Ostomel. They were doing it in other airports not around Kyiv. So we had to defend again this airport. Nothing happened. Just a few bombings, a few planes, a few stuff like that, but it wasn't like we didn't shoot at any Russians. It was just we were just in a new apartment building, the big one, and we're just ready. So this kind of mission, it might be boring to talk about it after, but you never know. It could be either the worst of the worst, like Normandy everybody's want to attack you, and then it's hell, or it could be just very quiet and nothing happened, and then nothing happened. So we use this place as a staging place for going then on the front line. So it was like, okay, you rest at this place, maybe something's gonna happen, but most likely nothing will happen. So the soldier were staying in this place not far from the airport, and then we're sending troops at the front line, facing the actual army, at the front line. So that's what happened. And I remember that at that time we knew that Irpin was a hot spot. The northwest of Kiev was not a good place to be. Depending, if you want to fight, it's a good place. But I remember that my wife was saying, you can go wherever you want, but please don't go to Irpin. There's a lot of people dying there. And I remember, as 2 days after we went to Kiev, I went into this vehicle, and then I was asking the Ukrainians, are we going to Irpin? And then he said, Irpin, da. No, da for yes. So I was like, okay, maybe I should not. It's a good thing my wife doesn't know about it. And it was this
So it's crazy.
The exact same.
You run into war, and the only person
Yeah.
you're concerned about or scared of talking to or scared of in that whole thing is your wife. That's the best.
Well, I didn't want to she's smart. So she knows about this kind of, the wars on the place to go and not to go. She was following all the details, on some website and some other sources. And but she knew that for security reason, you don't say, okay, let's say you don't make a call on WhatsApp on any application. You don't write a message saying, okay, I'm at that location, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this. So obviously you try to be secret. A lot of people, they think that I'm just like a public person. I'm just talking. I just want to say anything to be public. But the truth is, when I'm going public, I'm doing for a reason. Especially when I was a soldier at the beginning of the war, I was doing it on purpose. There was a goal in doing that. And so the goal is not to share tactical information. It's not to share, okay, I'm going to be in this city or I'm going to fight this Russian. So you have to be careful not to share images of landscape. Example, you don't show a building. You don't take a picture of, let's say, the airport. I didn't publish any picture of me defending the airport, because an airport, there's not like 1,000 airports in Ukraine. So if you send a picture of an airport, they're going to know you're there. And at that point, I had this feeling that the Russians might target me. And then, by the way, I had meetings with interesting people in Kiev, and they confirmed later that the Russians were trying to kill me personally. It was a personal thing. They really tried to get me personally.
Because there was press. Wally, is that because there was press and people were talking about the fact that you were over there and that you had these skills?
Yes, because I was becoming a symbol, basically. And it was the beginning of the war. You have to understand that the war it's very emotional. Alex knows that. He remembers how we felt. How the Ukrainians felt, how the people felt, especially the people up there. And after the facts, it's very easy to think, okay, when you watch a documentary about war, it's very technical. So let's say you watch a battle, let's say in Second World War in Russia or France, it's going to be very technical. It's going to be, okay, this unit got into that city, and then there was this other division, let's say German division, doing this, and it's very technical, But when you are in the war and you see all these big arrows, these powerful arrows of Russian troops with tanks, helicopters, rockets, all these troops moving everywhere and crushing all the cities in Ukraine and just taking everything they want, it's very emotional. You don't know what's going to happen. So you need people to inspire you. You need symbols, So that's why it was critical to spread the word that, okay, there's some people like me, foreigners, because Zelensky asked for foreigners. It's critical that you are being very vocal about, okay, I'm a foreigner, I'm going to help Ukrainians. They don't want Russians, so you don't, because some people were saying you're going to get arrested because Ukrainians are pro-Russians. They were part of Soviet Union, so you're gonna get into Ukraine, and then there's gonna be somebody just shooting you. You're gonna get arrested, and they're just gonna the whole country is gonna collapse, and it's suicidal. Don't do that. So I knew that because I had this experience as a foreign fighters and fighting ISIS. I knew how the foreign fighters were thinking, and I knew that there were maybe thousands and thousands of possible foreign fighters looking at the situation, not knowing what they're gonna do. They had this feeling, okay, maybe I'm gonna go hell, but I don't want to be like suicidal, you know. So and then I see this guy, what's his name? Wali, okay. Wali, what is that? A sniper, okay. Okay, taking pictures, smiling, having fun with Ukrainians. Okay, cool. Okay, now I think I'm gonna go because at least I know I'm gonna be somewhat safe with Ukrainians. Yes, I'm gonna fight the Russians, but at least it's not like I'm gonna go joining like I'm gonna just be captured, you know, by Ukrainians. So I had to be very vocal about this, and I was becoming a symbol, you know. And there were other symbols, by the way. So it's very critical, especially at the beginning of the war when there's so much emotions, there's so many people hesitating, you know, on the verge of collapsing, of retreating, and just run away. You need symbols, and you had many symbols in Ukraine. You know, the first one was maybe the ghost of Kiev, the fighter pilot who supposedly was killing lots of fighters. You know, so now we know the stories. It wasn't a real fighter. It was like a bunch of amazing Ukrainian pilots who made, by the way, the difference in the sky. And one of the reasons why the Russians could not bomb me at some places in the Battle of Irpin is because the Ukrainian pilots, the ghost of Kiev, which was many pilots that we know, but they were destroying lots of airplanes on the Russian side. But it was a legend. Okay, you have this ghost of, you know, fighting against all odds against the Air Force, the Russian Air Force. You had this, we call it babushka. Babushka is a grandmother, you know. You had this story about the babushka in Ukraine seeing a drones, you know, Russian drone, a small drone, you know, reconnaissance drone, and then she took a jar of cucumber, which is something very common in Ukraine, and she was basically taking this and throwing at the drone, you know.
I heard that.
That was so inspiring because you have, okay, a babushka is like just so common. It's like the grandmother looking at the people walking the street, and then she takes this jar, which is something so common, you know, in Ukraine, and then she doesn't care about the consequences. She throws the jar, and then you have this, you know, this legend of babushka throwing a jar, and then you have this farmer, which is something again very typical in Ukraine. He has this farmer. He doesn't care about the consequences. He just go by the tanks, and that was true. But it wasn't just a legend. So that guy, crazy Ukrainian. The Ukrainians are so crazy. He was towing the tanks, you know, with his, you know, his tractor. How crazy, you know. And then he was very vocal about it. And then he had this other symbols, like the other one were a Snake Island. Maybe you don't remember, but there was this small islands in the south, and by the way,
Russian ships go fuck yourself. Yeah, that's
and now they have postcard about it. You know, they make us propaganda in Ukraine.
Isn't there a stamp as well?
People.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a stamp, and I got a postcard, by the way. So somebody gave me.
You got a Snake Island go F yourself postcard?
Yes, and so there were so many symbols, and you know, everybody was saying, maybe after the war, maybe we're saying, okay, this is gonna end in like a week or two. The country is gonna collapse. You see Crimea happen, and then nothing. There was no resistance. Donbass, everything is gonna collapse in just a few weeks. There's nothing you can do about it. It's like second largest army in the world want to take Ukraine. They're gonna take Ukraine. You know, that's end of the story. And then you had these stories about babushka throwing a jar, the ghost of Kiev. You had this farmer not caring, Snake Island. He doesn't care about being killed or captured. He just like, I'm gonna keep that island. You're gonna have to kill us. And then you have this sniper not caring and just going and just being very vocal about it. So my vision at that time was to inspire basically, and to lead for other foreigners.
Did you know that would be something that was needed? It sounds very premeditated on your part, Wally. Like
Yeah,
you
it
went
was-
there with
Yeah.
that purpose.
Yeah, exactly. I knew it. I knew it was important because I know our wars. It's my third one, right?
Hmm.
So I tend, and I read a lot about history, you know. So I tend to be. I think I have empathy. So I think I know how the Ukrainians were feeling. I know how the foreign powers were, the possible one that maybe they were thinking about coming and go fight. So I think I was like, okay, I have to be very vocal, and yes, that was deliberate. I was doing that on the purpose. It wasn't just like this guy going on Instagram or TikTok or whatever and just being like, he wants to be famous, he's going to do anything to be famous, he doesn't care, blah 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 blah. That lots of people, they think that, but there's behind the scenes, I would say, intentions and planning from my part. You know, there's a why I did all that. You know, there's a reason, and I think it worked because I remember that I know they were friends. You know, I have family in South America. I have, you know, I know security contractors in, let's say, Mexico, and they were sending me messages. They like, okay, it's getting crazy because my, let's say, son or daughter, I don't remember all the details, but they were saying basically, my daughter's, she's on TikTok and she sees you all the time. You know, it's like she's not even looking for seeing you, and she's just seeing you all the time, you know. And I was receiving this kind of message from many places, from many friends in the world, basically my own family also. And so I knew, okay, if I'm on TikTok on, let's say, this random city in Mexico, so it's it's getting mainstream. And then there were other mainstream media taking like just taking the stories about this, and I was trying to do interview when I had times. I didn't have times to reply to all of them, so I had to say no to people like CNN, Fox News, and these kind of people because I had no times. At some point, I had to fight also. Right?
This is way better than
So-
CNN or Fox News. Then, by the way, us,
Yeah.
we're way better. Good job.
we can talk about it later, but yeah. So and then I was becoming a symbol, and then the Russians basically were thinking, okay, we have to get that guy because he's going to inspire how many people is going to be inspired. So we have to send this message that, okay, if you go to Ukraine, you're going to get killed so quickly. You know, it's going to be very quick. You're going to get killed because even the best sniper, which I'm not the best sniper, by the way. I'm just a professional soldier. Sniper, but I'm not the best one. I'm just good, which is good enough, I think. But anyway, there was this legend about the best sniper in the world, blah blah blah, and then we had to kill this symbol. You know, we have to announce that we have the control. Yes, it's not, Ukraine's won't collapse, but we are in control. And then we have the best of the best sniper coming to Ukraine helping. We have to kill that guy, and we have to announce it. And the time they announced it, and by the way, I was almost killed for real, but it wasn't in Mariupol, the place they said it was. They said, and by the way, I was the last guy learning about my own death. So, because I had no cell phone, you know, now I have cell phone, but at the front line for security reasons, because I work in IT and security and such thing. I know that you don't open the cell phone. You know, you don't do that. It's very dangerous to do it, especially at the front line. But so I had no cell phone, so I was going. We call it going dark. So no cell phone. So I didn't know about all these stories about me being killed. And what happened is that the Russians were saying, okay, on the task, official, you know, it was official that they said, now they remove it, by the way. I checked on the task, I was so curious, but they remove it because it's embarrassing. But I think there's some screen capture, by the way, from the internet about this announcement on the task agency, but they officially announced it. So, and now we don't believe the Russians. We know that they are a bit like, to be frank, a bit stupid sometimes. The Russians as a nation, they have lots of smart people, but for some reason, in the defense-related stuff,
collectively,
lots of guys are in charge. That's the reality, which we are lucky. We are lucky about that, but that's the reality. But so they officially announced it, and it was just maybe 2-3 weeks after the war. So lots of people were thinking, okay, if the Russians, which is a big country, right, a modern country with planes, technologies, and you know, if they say officially that they killed that guy, it's not just like a TikTok guy saying, okay, he's dead. It's like officially saying, okay, we got him. It's 20 minutes. He's killed after being to the front. He was killed, and it was in Mariupol. And so lots of people, they believe it. So when I went back behind the line to rest 2 days, we were doing rotations, doing battles. And just there's many stories that happened. But anyway, that's maybe we're gonna talk about it later. But I remember that I opened my cell phone, and all this crazy news. There were two things that popped in my feed. There was this Will Smith slapping people, somebody, that was the type of Will Smith. So there was this Will Smith, and then me being dead. And I was like, okay, cool. So there were lots of friends of friends of friends sending, "Are you okay? Please say something."
And you're like, "Yeah, I'm fine." But have you seen this Will Smith video? My God.
Yeah. Wally, are you home? Are you home right now?
Yes. It's my place.
Okay,
yes,
and so how long's the war been going on, Alex?
Year and 8 months.
A year and 8 months?
Yes.
And so how many times have you been over, Wally? And do you have plans on going back?
Yeah. The first thing I'd like to say, though, when you ask Ukrainian how long was the war, the answer is going to be different from what you might expect, because Alex knows that. But if you ask Ukrainians, the war, when it started, they're going to say 2014,
Yeah.
And what the way they called it, this 2022, they're going to call it the full-scale invasion. It's just intensification of war, but the war started in 2014. That's all Ukrainians think, just Alex knows that, obviously. But there's a lot of people that say, when the war started. But you see, if you're Ukrainian, you don't see the same reality. The war existed in 2014, and
we forget that.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think we also forget about how effective they were on the front end of this latest invasion, right? They had made their way. Right? Yeah. Like Russia had made their way quite like almost halfway through Ukraine, Alex, before they got pushed back, and before the supply chains got cut off, and guys like you, Wally, came in to help. And so I mean, I'm just remembering all that now as you're telling your story about getting into Ukraine. And do you have plans on I'd like to hear your response on that. You've been there twice now?
Yes.
And
3 times.
3 times.
So the first time I went 2 months, and then and pretty much a year ago I went again 2 months, and then I went this summer. I wish I was. And by the way, I was standby to go since the beginning of the year, but now I was waiting, canceling vacation with my family, but the order to join the battle never came. And at some point, I realized, okay, I'm the guy offering my help, but the Ukrainians don't want my help anymore. It took me a long time to realize that, to accept that, okay, I'm the guy. I'm more like a beggar than a fighter at that point. The Ukrainians don't want my help now. They want equipment, they want money, but they don't want this kind of expertise. And you have to accept that, because I was very pushy about going to Ukraine, going to the front line. I did so many things and asking commanders, and sometimes it's too complicated, because when you're a guy known like me, it's a two-sided, double-edged sword. Yes, I like you, but if you come to my unit, then if something bad happened to you, there's going to be lots of people inquiring why it happened, why you were just left in the open and killed stupidly. There might be something. So it's like, okay, we like you, we want you, but not here, please. Okay. So they had this feeling that I was becoming like liabilities at some point. They liked me. They wanted to take pictures. They wanted to take selfies. We're taking selfie by the bodies at the front line, by the way. So it's pretty crazy. You just like have corpse of people all smashed by modern weapons, and we were just walking, and that's just another story. It happened in the east, in the Donbass, and then we went to not far from these corpses, these bodies, dead bodies, and then selfie, you know. And Ukraine's taking selfie by the corpse, crazy. But anyway, so you feel like at that point, you know, and there's so many people saying, okay, there's a documentary, there's like a feature movie project, there's a bunch of stuff, you know. People saying, oh, can we take a selfie? Can we take a picture? Can you talk to? Can you promote this thing? And can you? There's a bunch of such messages, and you feel like you don't deserve it because I'm like, yes, I'm a professional soldier. I'm a good soldier. I did some stuff, but to be honest, guy, there's lots of guy now at the front line doing way more than I do. You know, way more, and they don't get attention. So, and I thought about it. You know, I'm like, okay, it's not deserved. No, I can't proceed with documentary movies because there's so many other guys that did a lot more than I did. So I'm just a symbol. And then I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, no, I think it's okay. I'm like a spokesperson, and by the way, I'm helping with other things. There are things I cannot talk about right now. You're gonna hear about me. Maybe
Like
we're
what?
gonna do
Like
some
what?
other interview.
What can't
in
you
the
talk
future.
about right now?
Because there's some project, right? There's some things.
Yeah, but
You know, but
specifically, what
obviously
are
I
they?
cannot talk about it. So there are things that's gonna be. They're still in the shadow now, but they won't be in the shadow in the future. But anyway, that's another thing. But
That's awesome.
as a spokesperson, you know, it's an experience, you know. So I think when you a spokesperson, because that's why I am in some way. I'm speaking for this cause called the protecting Ukraine, and you have to accept that when you're a spokesperson, any cause as spokesperson, you know, you can be for health, could be for politics, it could be for a war, any war, they have spokesperson, could be for sports, could be for a bunch of stuff. So you have this spokesperson. It's a thing that is necessary. I think it's a good thing. But the guy speaking, let's say me, you have to be, you have to speak. It's good to speak, but you have to always remembering the people that you're just one story. You know, you're not the only one. You're not the perfect one. You're not the best one. So you have to remember that you're speaking for a group. So you're not like the best sniper in the world saving Ukraine. You're just a guy who took part, help the best he can. He's not perfect. I'm not perfect.
Can I say this, Wally? Though I mean, I think I appreciate the humility, and I think I think it's awesome. But man, what you've done and what you did is just not. It's not
Normal.
how people are wired.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah, I know that. Yes,
it is very exceptional,
know
and
that.
but
I understand.
You know what? You say that, but if you go to Ukraine, you're gonna see so many courageous people.
Yeah,
People like Alex who stayed. You know, we had a way to call with Ukrainians and Ukrainians. I was with Ukraine Special Forces, so they're kind of good, you know. So they're crazy, and they were saying that people like Alex, we call it sometimes civilians volunteers, because in Ukraine when you say volunteers, it could be anybody helping. Like Alex was helping. It could be like a volunteers. In the West, when we say volunteers, it could mean people like me just going help. But if you go to Ukraine and say volunteers, it's anybody helping, right? It could be like a guy bringing food, it could be a guy help with the medical stuff. And then you have what we call the territorial defense, which is like a guy with weapons safeguarding their village. And sometimes the front is coming, but they have no experience. But the special forces guy, we're calling these guys, the territorial defense and the volunteers, they were saying these guys are the heroes without how they were saying, no experience but big balls, you know.
yeah.
Because we had lots of guys killed, you know, territorial defense, and every day pretty much, you know. And they had no experience. They were like, you can have this 50 years old, 60 years old guy smoking AK-47, just defending the land, and he doesn't care. And he didn't look depressed that much. He didn't look, you know, he looked like it's normal. It's like, so you say, okay, Wally, it's special what you did and it's good. And yes, thanks. But you just go to Ukraine and you're going to see some special people. You know, they're so courageous. Ukraine, I think they are the most courageous fighter I've ever seen. And in a way, you know, this summer I was helping with the training in the trench warfare and some stuff with the Ukrainians. And I was saying to the Ukrainians, you're so courageous that it's a good thing and it's the worst thing, because Ukrainians, they are so proud, they're so courageous that lots of them, they're gonna go on suicidal mission. They're just gonna rush and just all get killed. It happened so many times. And I told them, you won't win this war if you all get killed in that trench. You have to be smart. You have to think.
Yeah.
War is a technical thing. You have to mix the technical side of things, and it's good to be courageous. That's the main recipe. It's like a recipe, like you want to do a cake, you need sugar. You don't have sugar, and yes, you can still make decent cake, but at some point you're gonna need some. Afghanistan, the fight, they had all the equipment. We gave lots of money, lots of tanks, helicopters, bunch of stuff, and they didn't fight against the Taliban, before Ukraine did this full-scale invasion. So Ukrainians, they're so courageous that's their main. It's the best thing they have, and it's also a curse.
Yeah.
Lots of guy I know,
see that.
they got killed on stupid mission. That's true, on stupid mission. They know that, but they're so Slav-Arcane, like they're gonna rush, and we call this mission 200. In Ukraine we say the mission 200, because in the West we say a KIA is it's like a 200 in the Russians army. They call it, the equivalent is 200.
Mhm.
A wounded in action is a 300. That's the code for it. So when, let's say, over the radio they say that we have 3 times 200, that means they have 3 dead guy killed in action. And the Ukrainians, they have a word for this kind of a stupid mission, just rushing towards the enemy. They call it the 200 mission. It's a mission when you might send 10 guys and then there might be none coming back. And especially last year, now they're getting better at this kind of attrition warfare. We call it in technical, we call it attrition warfare, but now they're getting better, the Ukrainians. But especially last year, they were sending guys like in suicidal mission, like no chance. They just rush and try to take a wood, try to take a hill, try to take a village. Nobody's coming back. You never hear the full story. You don't know what happened. They just never come back. They're all dead. It's a good thing they're so courageous, but at some point you need to be smart to balance being courageous and but not to be too much like blind about the fact that modern warfare is very dangerous.
Mhm.
There's no way you can just run into a field. If there's a machine gun there, you're gonna get smashed, no matter how courageous you are. That's something they learned the hard way, many units in Ukraine, sadly.
Yeah, well, dude, and it's like, you don't know what you don't know when you get attacked by a foreign country, right? And so you got all these people, bravado, heart, and balls, as you point out, cojones, as they say in Latin America, is that that takes over for a lot of different people in those situations. Fight or flight. I'm just going to go in and I'm going to do my thing. And keep in mind, I'm talking about what you're talking about, having never been in war from the comfort of my house in Toronto, right? So, but I get what you're saying, and it takes, this otherworldly ability to be able to focus. Like, you and I were talking about it in our prep the other day when we were just kind of shooting the shit, and you were talking about your first action in Ukraine. You were talking about the time when you almost got blown up by a tank shell that came right into the room that you were in with Shadow. And you were talking about it like I talk about recounting my day at dinner with my significant other, where it's like, oh yeah, I did this and that happened and that was bad and this is bad. And then you see
Dean's all about work-life balance.
Yeah, we can call it that way. But when I went back to the first trip of Ukraine, I was doing my tax. They were late, so I basically work in IT. So I had to arrange for a meeting, pretty much for the same that we do right now. But instead of talking about things trying to kill me, we were saying, okay, we need this kind of database, we need this kind of code, and we need this kind of technologies. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, 2 weeks ago, let's say, guys were killed just beside me. So that's my reality. But for some reason, I don't know why my brain is working that way, but I can make a difference. I can, like, okay, it's not, I'm not in Ukraine now. And I was worried because when I went back for my first week from Ukraine, I was like, okay, I was fighting in places that look well, Ukraine is different from the West, but it's still very similar in some way. So I was fighting in, let's say, forests, woods, and it's like the forest not far from my house. It's like the same. So I was thinking, will I be able to just walk into the forest and thinking, and just thinking, okay, people died and it looked that way. I was worried that I would not be able to be just enjoying nature, right? And nope, it didn't matter. So I know
Wow.
it's like a switch, and I know it's not the same wood, it's not the same thing, it's not. There's no tank, there's no. But we have to be careful for security. That's another topic I cannot talk about for other reasons, obviously. But there's always the shadow of security that we have to deal with. But other than that, I know that there's no mine in the woods. I know that there's no trench with soldiers. I know there's no missiles that's gonna hit me. I don't think so. I hope not. But yeah, so maybe I can describe because lots of people, they don't realize how violent the war can be. So maybe I can just explain a few. I would say.
Yeah, please, because Lachlan just sent me a note. He asked when we can get to the. He's like, "Hey, are we allowed to ask him about his kill count? Are we allowed to ask him about how that worked? Are we allowed to do that?"
His humility is really, really high. I know, it's right, and so you get a sense that Wally, I get a sense you're a good guy, right? And you.
Well, thank you. That we say in Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm having trouble. And this is just me with a very little understanding, very shallow understanding of religion. But you say you're Christian, but you're still a fighter. I find that hard to rectify in my own brain. But I again, and I don't need we don't need the gory details. But you went over there with a purpose, and you ended up with a reputation, whether it was deserved or not, based on a very strategic plan, which obviously makes you a very smart person because you became very useful to the war as a whole for Ukraine. But I mean, let's get to some nitty gritty here. How many Russians did you kill? Like, I mean, I hate to be blunt about it, but you must have had some impact on the front lines.
No. I didn't kill any Russians. I just shot at a few windows. They were moving for us.
Really?
Again, yes, and I'm gonna be very honest about it. I love the cold hard truths of reality. There's nothing that I like better than talking about how brutal reality is. It could be in IT, it could be in anything, in war. And I used to say that war is a terrible disappointment. And then propaganda tried to say that I was terribly disappointed. But the thing that I'm always saying is that war is very different from what you might think. And the reality, that's the reality. Maybe you don't like this reality. Maybe you want to have some Hollywood style stories, which is kind of good for propaganda to inspire people. But at the end of the day, what really happens? How is it really at the war? How does it work? I'm going to tell you the real story, because you have lots of people on Instagram, TikToks, and YouTube, and lots of places. You have these stories. But how is it for real, for real? And I'm going to tell you, the reality in war is that most of the time you don't see any enemy. That's the reality. Most of the people who get killed in war, especially modern warfare, they're going to get killed by somebody who they don't see. They're going to be killed by a remote machine. There's going to be a tanks, artillery, missiles. There's going to be a firefight. And you know what? In a firefight, you don't see much people, because people are scared. So the noise is something that at some point it feels like at the front line that there's nobody. When there's no shooting, you have the artillery, you have a few shots, but sometimes it's like I don't see anybody. It's like in a movie, like you're gonna watch, and then in 5 minutes you're gonna have a target. It's not how it works. We had encounters with other snipers, but to be honest, we didn't know exactly where they were. We know, okay, they are in this building, I think. So we shot, let's say, at this window with shot there, but it was a dark hole. There's no way we can know what effects we have. There's no way. And sometimes it happened that you're gonna see a target. It happened in other situations, in other wars, and that we saw the target. It happens, but it's not that common. And to be honest, when you shoot somebody, usually you don't get to shoot somebody else because just imagine, okay, you're on patrol, and that happens. By the way, that's the real situation I'm telling you. Okay, that. But just I'm going to tell this story on the enemy side, what I think happened. But just imagine the situation: you're walking, everything is quiet. You know that there's some soldiers, enemies somewhere. You don't know exactly where, and then bang, there's your enemy drops. He's going on the floor. He's bleeding, dead. There was a 50 call hitting that guy. There's no machine gun shooting. There's no nothing. There's just one bullet, and the bullet goes quicker than the speed of sound, right? So there's no like warning. There's no like, and you hide. With artillery, you have this warning, which is about half of a second. You have like and then you have like a split, like just half of a second just to get down. It's enough most of the time, to be honest. But with snipers, you don't have this. You can't prepare. You can hide. So yeah, you're gonna have this snap, and your friend's gonna be on the ground. What are you gonna do? Are you gonna be like heroically fighting and shooting everywhere and just rushing to the enemy? No, you're gonna hide. And every time we shot, not every time, but every time I shot personally, guys, there were no other guys that I shot after, because the other guy beside they drop as I would say as fast, as the guy that I shot. If you shoot just beside, let's say there's a bullet here. Just imagine you are me and there's a bullet there. I can guarantee that you're gonna drop on the floor very quickly, especially if the caliber of the sniper rifle is 338, 50 cal, something kind of big. You're gonna, it's international. You're gonna know that it's not good, and you're gonna drop so quick, and then you won't get up and watch and hey, what happened? There's like a bullet. No, you're gonna hide, and end of the story. It's gonna end right there. Then you can send artillery. You can try to destroy what you think is the position of the enemy, but you won't see anybody, And in the reality of war is that you don't see much. You think that you're a sniper, you're gonna see a lot of stuff. Not that much. You don't see much target because everybody's scared. And if you get to shoot somebody that you see the target, I can guarantee that the other ones won't be showing them their face, So there's a lot of confusion, and the reality is that most of the kills are done by people who don't see each other, and I'm going to tell you how it happens in reality. Okay, again, because I love the cold hard truth, the reality. I love, because everybody's trying to say amazing story, but I love how brutal and cold the reality is, and the reality is. War is a terrible disappointment. You expect this glorious fighting. You're gonna fight end to end with the Russians. You're gonna see them in the eyes. You're gonna see the Russians rushing, and you're gonna fight the Russians. It happens, by the way. Sometimes it happens. We can talk about this kind of situation because I've seen Russians, yes, but it's not common. The common thing that's gonna happen, and again, it's pretty disappointing. It's a disappointing story, but that's the reality. If you want to hear about how the war is for real, I'm going to tell you. Reality is you're going to be in a building. There's going to be a tank or artillery shooting. You won't see maybe you won't see the tank. Maybe you won't see the artillery. Maybe you're just going to die there under the debris and everything. And that's how most of the soldiers are killed, by big weapons, and they don't see anybody. And I think maybe it's like what, 30%, 20%, I don't know exactly for this war what's the count, but maybe 20% are hit by small fires, meaning machine guns, assault rifles, sniper rifles, this kind of stuff. Most of the guys who get killed in war, they're not dying right away. So let's say that you have 1,000 guys killed, you can have maybe 20,000 killed by small arms. Let's say 20%. Then most of them, they won't die right now. So there's going to be maybe 5,000 who's going to die on the spot, right? And most of the time when you shoot somebody, because the terrain is not perfect, you won't see like the guy dropping on the floor in plain sight, right? It's going to be, let's say you're going to hit, there's going to be somebody falling, because to be honest, when you shoot somebody, it's not that amazing. it's just like a guy dropping most of the time. There's no splash of blood like in the movie. There's no big stuff like that. You shoot somebody, it's basically like the guy drops, like there's no more life in the body. It's just dropping, like somebody who would lose consciousness, like on the stage. Let's say,
Yeah.
it's like he drops. That's it. There's nothing. It's so quick and easy. And the first time that I saw that, by the way, that we shot guys like this, after training, it felt like, what? That's all. That's it. That's we just shoot and he drops and that's it. That's it. And and at that moment in Afghanistan, that was the first time I felt like, okay, that's so easy. That's what's dangerous with war. We press a magic button called a trigger, and then there's a guy dropping, and then it's over after a second. That is so easy. It's so there's nothing hard. In training it's harder because we train in longer distances, and then we have this target. Let's say that happened for real. The first time that I saw a guy being headshot, I was a spotter. Most of the time, by the way, I'm a spotter. Okay, so I prefer to be the spotter because in the sniper team you have the spotter and the shooter. So I was with this spotting scope, and everything was so clear because when you're a spotter, you don't have the recoil, right? So you just adjusting everything because I love to be a spotter. And then I remember that I was counting down, for the team because I had two snipers under my command, and the drill was, okay, on the count of two, you engage the target. That means you press the trigger. And because on one is the standard procedure that the assault team kicks the doors and they go rush into the assaulters. Let's say you do such things. So the drill is always onto the sniper they shoot. So they shoot the sentries, they shoot primary targets, and then you have this assaulter rushing at the count of one, right? So I said, okay, snipers, I have control. The count of two, you engage a target. And then all the adjustments were made on the turret, the windage and everything. So I said, okay, 5, 4. And I was counting like I do now in my head. It was the first time that I was seeing that, right? I was like, that's crazy, man. I'm just in 3 seconds, this guy's going to be dead because the distance was maybe 250 meters or something like that. So it wasn't far. So I was pretty sure that he would be hit, this Taliban. So I was thinking like, that's crazy. He's like 2 seconds. This guy is gonna drop. I know it because it's so easy to get. This shot is not complicated. And 5, 4, 3, 2, and there were suppressors, and the guy just fall. There's a bit of blood, and I remember that there was the wall behind the head, and it was this big splash in the shape of a star with the dust. And it's basically like you would punch somebody, but he moves, but he drops right away. And there's these stars of dust behind the head. There's no blood. There's nothing out. There's nothing that much to be seen. It's just a guy with dust, and then he drops. But that's not common. Usually in war, what happens is that you're going to shoot at windows, especially in urban terrain. You're going to shoot at windows. You're going to shoot at these places, and you won't see the target being hit. There's going to be like maybe 50 guys shooting in all their direction. Everybody's so bad at shooting during wartime because everybody's so stressed. I can guarantee that everybody's just shooting crazy everywhere. And maybe there's going to be 1 or 2 bullets hitting the targets, but most likely you won't know who did that. Everybody's going to be claiming when they're going to go to the bars with the nice chicks, oh, I killed 3 guys. They're going to, with the beer, going to be, I'm the one who killed 3 guys. We did that and blah blah blah. And there's a chicks behind. There's a chicks listening, and I'm the guy. I killed 3 guys. But the reality, I'm going to be brutally honest. Most of these stories are false. They're not true. The reality, if you want a realistic story, it's going to be something more. Okay, we went into a patrol. We went into a wood. And then they were fight. I didn't know what it was. Then I thought maybe it's our guys who are shooting. And then I realized, no, it's not our guy. It's the enemy. So my friend who is a machine gunner, he just thread the wood and he just shot everything. And then I went behind a 3. I shot, and I just like randomly shot. And then there was this other guy, my friend, let's say called, I don't know, Eric. And then he went to RPG. And we sent like 10 RPGs. And then there were artillery, And then there was the next day there was another patrol going to that wood, and we found 3 bodies. That's a realistic war story. That's typical.
Huh.
You know, I killed 3 guys, and then it was like a sniper. Not common, I can tell you. So that's the reality. Again, I think it's so much more interesting. Don't you think?
Oh, I do too. You know, I do.
I do.
It's funny because you're clearing up a whole bunch of different stuff. Like we were talking about how you're very much alive and not dead, which was the first true or false, which you nailed. But there are a couple other ones. Like it says here, you know, and I was laughing because there's a great article. It's why is Wali the sniper known in the Western world? A good sniper tends to get around 5-6 kills a day. Great sniper gets 7 to 10. Part of an elite group of snipers in a different class. And then it says, get this. Wali can provide up to 40 kills a day on a productive campaign. These numbers are what made him a legend among the world's military.
You know what's funny with this kind of story? Why 40? Why not 39? So when you get this kind of story about, okay, I killed 10 guys or 15 or 20, why is it
69?
Like 19? Like, why 40? 40 is a Bible number, by the way. So we have this it's war, right? So we tend to say this kind of numbers. So when you have the story, I killed 10 guys, I killed 20 guys, maybe it's not true, right? Typical story would be because most likely it's going to be a group, it's going to be a team, it's going to be many people. I doubt that you're going to be alone. But let's say that you killed 10 guys. It's going to be more like, okay, I think it was 11. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly. It was a stress. Maybe it was 12. I don't remember exactly. And then I think I did it. 4 guys, they dropped, but I'm not sure. They run away. One of them dropped and didn't move. And then 5 other guys, they just like crawl after that. So I think I hit them, but I'm not sure. That's reality. But to be honest, it's possible for a sniper like me to kill 40 guys, but it's not common. But there's one situation that's possible, by the way. Not more than one, but I'm going to give you an example, okay? And why people think maybe sniper are killing 40 guys a day, Russians, okay? Just an example, okay? We are at the beginning of the war, the first, let's say, 2 days. You are Russians, you going into convoys into Kiev. You think it's going to be simple. You think it's going to be easy. And by the way, they were officers with restaurant reservation, by the way, in Kiev, okay? You knew that? They were officers, Russians, who booked restaurants in Kiev because they were thinking, okay, we're going to just go in convoys. It's going to be easy. All the defense is going to collapse. We're going parade in Kiev, and they have these medals, you know, they have these parade uniforms. It's gonna be easy, right? So and we have a good meal at the restaurant. It's booked already, you know. And they were on, Tinders and this kind of dating apps. It's gonna be like peacekeeping almost, right? So they were thinking that, it's gonna be like a big Crimea. Everything is going to collapse and there's going to be no resistance. We're going to laugh about NATO. Ukraine doesn't exist. They're all Russians. Anyway, half of them speak Russian. So that they were thinking that. So just imagine, okay, you're Russian. You are in the convoys. You're invincible. You have all these helicopters, planes, missiles. You have all the assets you want, right? You're professional soldiers. You get into a road and then you stop because you want to stop because let's say there's a place you want to buy food, let's say, because that's something that they did. You stop at, let's say, at 20 kilometers in Ukraine. You have this, 20 vehicles of convoys. You go out of your vehicle, and then you go to this place because you have money and you want to spend some money. You have some food, you want some chips, you want some Red Bulls, you want some stuff like that because Ukraine had Red Bulls, and in your village in Russia you don't have this, let's say. And you go out, and then there's so much noise with the engines and everything. You think it's going to be a peacekeeping mission, and you don't know, but there's a bunch of snipers in the wood, and they don't care about They don't care about you being the second largest army in the world. They don't care because they're Ukrainians, and they're gonna fucking shoot you. And there are 3 guys against this convoy, and they're gonna fucking shoot you. Sorry for my language, but they don't care because they're Ukrainians. Now we know about the Ukrainians, but you just have to imagine the situation. You are Russians, and then there's a noise. And then there's a sniper shooting one guy. there's so much noise. Maybe they have suppressors given by the Western NATO before, so the noise is not that loud. And then one guy is dropping, and then you are still there buying some Red Bull, right? That your mind is wired to, instead of peacekeeping, I want my Red Bull, right? And there's noise, and then another guy is hit. Let's say 50 meters. He's just dropping by the wheels, and he's not moving. He's bleeding. He's about to die. And then another guy, another guy, another guy. So that's one situation when it's possible to have many kills. And maybe in the first few days, it happened maybe a few times. I don't have any specific stories about that, but that's the only possible way I can.
I'm calling bullshit. I have a feeling that you had far too many details.
That story sounded very specific for a guy that had no details and wasn't there.
No, I wasn't there. I wasn't there. But it's a typical situation. It's possible that happens, right? So it's.
I have a question, Wally. You've talked a lot about
more things that are possible. Tell us more things that are possible that you had nothing to do with, Wally.
Yeah. I have a question about your explanation of war and being a major disappointment if you have this idea of what it is and then the reality of it, which you said you love the hard truth, the hard reality of war. Has there been a movie or a television show or anything that maybe even that you've read, Wally, that takes you into the theater of war? Close. Yes. It's a close representation.
If you want I think the best war movie, my favorite one, and I watched it in Ukraine, by the way, my second tour in Ukraine. It's The Thin Red Line. You maybe remember that movie? Thin Red Line is, if you want the feel of war.
Terrence Malick. Yeah.
I think it's the best. Just the tension that's building up. There's no fight. They go on the beach. There's no Japanese. Typical. You expect. You have this disappointment, right? You're all pumped up. You're gonna fight. It's gonna be like you're gonna fight on the beach. You're gonna have to throw grenades, and then you go and nothing. There's planes overhead. There's nothing. You go into the jungle, and then there's one guy being killed by a sniper, like a sharpshooter, a sniper. And then we send artillery. And then there's lots of people being killed very quickly. There's a guy just unpinning a grenade and and then he's dying from accident. Again, very typical. That's all this spiritual people thinking about what's life, why are we doing this as a species, why are we fighting? And that's so common in war that people are thinking so many stuff because they're waiting before and after battles, and then they think, would I be the next one? Would I die? Why are we doing this? It's too terrible. It's so if you want a field of war, I think the best movie so far, one of the best, is Thin Red Line. I think it's one of the best.
Wally, you your own mortality and the fact that you have your Christian faith. How do you rationalize your job and what you do? Is that a fair question?
Yeah, of course. First of all, you have to be honorable. There were lots of situations in many wars. And by the way, I'm going to explain that way. Okay. When I was in the army, people were saying I was too nice. I was the nice guy. And I was with big, tough, Viking, big beard-looking snipers nowhere I go.
Yeah, can we just for a second point out though that you look like an underwear model, not a trained killer? Like just for a second, look at this. Like you don't look like a very dangerous person. There's another video, a picture of you just little fella just humping his way through the airport. How you doing? I'm here with my gun to kill a whole bunch of people. And then there's you, has a poppy on. You're just like, this is a nice fella. Like you literally look like a Calvin Klein model,
like a movie star.
Yes, exactly. I don't look like I'm this tough guy, right? And to be honest, I had this reputation of being too nice in the army, and there were jokes about it. And because they were saying when Wally, because I had this nickname because of Afghanistan, my first name is Oliver, and Wally is like the short version of the Afghans. That's the short way to explain it. So they were saying if Wally is mad and he's saying bad things about me, that's very, 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 very bad. Because at some point I was protecting. Let's say there was a soldier being bullied, and I was protecting lots of soldiers being bullied. I was saying, no, you don't deserve this, and I was protecting people in the army that way, and there were people saying, "Stop protecting this guy. He's gonna get us killed. We're gonna go Afghanistan. We're gonna go on patrol. Stop doing it." I was like protecting, and I was too nice, and at some point I got mad at some people, and people were saying, "Okay, Wally, if Wally says something bad about you, that's probably true because he's the nicest guy."
Yeah.
And when I read stories about me, Wally's like a psychopath. He wants to kill all day long, and I'm like, I don't think it's true, because I was in many situations in all wars, and I had this decision to make about life and death, and to decide basically like many situations, so many, and we're talking like we do now in this interview, and I was like, okay, are we? And it was plainly we were saying, okay, I think we should we kill him or not? What do you think? And let's say I was a spotter, I was like, I have this feeling that this guy maybe is just bad luck, that he should not be there, but maybe we should. No, let's not kill him. Okay, so we leave him. So that's the kind of crazy situation. And the other situation was like, what do you think? Let's think about it. Oh yeah, let's do it. And then, okay, adjustment, elevation, let's say 25, windish, right to when you're ready, and then we shoot the guy. But most of the time, to be honest, in many situations, I was in a situation when I decided not to shoot. And it's the same in Ukraine. There were lots of, surprisingly, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to go to Ukraine. It's going to be a war against soldiers. So there won't be any, I would say, decision making about the good identification of the target. So anything that's going to move, I'm going to shoot, right? Surprisingly, my background in Afghanistan and this kind of situation with insurgents, when all the population is mixed up, and sometimes it's like the front line, but sometimes it's all mixed up and you are behind the line and this kind of stuff. And I was thinking, it's good because this background serves me in Ukraine, because in many times there were targets and I was just about to shoot, and I'm like, okay, it looks like something, because I was feeling, okay, this guy moved the way he moves and everything. I was like, okay, it doesn't make sense. I think it's not Russians. It's no man's land. It can be Russians, but I'm gonna watch and see if I have to engage a target. And by the way, lots of people like Alex there in Urban, they were going out, let's say, for scavenging foods, and they were killed because there were lots of people shooting everything that moves, on both sides, by the way. Okay, and more on the Russian side, because the Russians were like, let's just fucking shoot everything, and they were shooting everything, buildings on fire, restaurants. They were just shooting everything at all the tanks, the missiles. So they were putting on fire everything. And sometimes after the event, you have these stories of, let's say, husband or friends got killed, he got shot by snipers, let's say, or a guy, he was walking in this place. And there's a story, at least one story, of one shot guy being killed by a sniper. We don't know which side, but he went on scavenging batteries, I think, on cars, the batteries, on the cars, and he got shot. But as for me, I think it's better to be honorable, and not shoot anything that moves. That's my decision. Maybe I'm too nice, maybe. But at the end of the day, you have to think, why are you doing this? Do you want to just kill and say that you killed 10 guys in a day, or which could be people like Alex that we have now on our show, or do you want to be honorable? And because I was famous at that time, I had this huge pressure to say that I killed somebody every day.
Yeah.
Yet you had so many big media, very huge one. I won't name them, but they were asking, okay, can you tell me this day, how many did you kill? And I said 0. And how many did you kill that day? 0. And they were like, you sure? Maybe you killed him? No, I don't think so. We just shot, and then I didn't see anything, and that's it. We killed them with artillery. They were dead, but I don't think I killed anybody. And said, that's disappointing. There was this huge pressure of killing anything, on my side, because everybody was watching. if Wali can kill anybody, that means it's not good, you know. So at that point, I was like, should I be honorable and not shoot people like Alex, or should I just shoot anything and claim that I'm the best sniper because I'm able to shoot people every day? You know, I'm just a good killer. I'm killing. But it's me as a Christian. I think I made a good choice, and I decided not to shoot when I'm too nice. And then you go on Facebook, on YouTube, and then you read about Wally being a bad sniper, not able to kill anybody, or you hear about Wally being a psychopath. He kills refugees, he kills a bunch of people. He doesn't care. He wants to be famous and be known to kill it. So there's lots of stories I was reading and was like, whatever, you know, I know what I did, so I don't care. I want to be honorable, but yeah.
But is there, like, when you talk about like literally you're talking about taking a life, right? Like, and it's your job. It's what you're hired to do. That was part of what you did. A bunch of tours in Afghanistan. You went and fought against ISIS. You know, and that's easy to sell to us in Western Canada. You know, fighting and shooting Russians in a war against Ukraine, where they've occupied and are terrorizing the poor people in that country. That's easy for us to understand. Super, super easy for us to understand, right? It is. I mean, like, because of the way that it is portrayed, or how it is explained to us that
our connection with Ukraine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, aligned interests and all that, but there's still a heaviness to it, right? For a guy like yourself, where it's like, man, I got the life of these people in my hands, and I you know, you and so being judicious about it is important.
Yeah, well, I can do that. Sometimes that's why maybe I'm a special kind of person, and people, they are like confused about me, because I can talk about it like very openly and say, oh yeah, we talk about killing somebody like it was like just talking about a movie and nothing. And if I have to do it, I'm going to do it. No doubt about it. But at the same time, I don't want to kill anybody. So I don't think I'm a psychopath. You know, I don't want to just kill for the sake of killing. And I know soldiers who did kill in all the wars I did, who made mistakes, you know, and they're not proud about it. And when it happens after, and they think about it, and they like, I feel, you know, that it's not good. I did something bad, and I've seen things, bad stuff. Right? All the wars, it happened. That's the sad reality of war. But yeah.
So let me ask you something. You didn't kill any Russians. How many times?
Well, I don't think so.
And how many times did you discharge your weapon? Maybe there's a better question. When you were
twice.
Just twice?
Yes, just
okay.
twice.
So you discharged your weapon twice. Is it true? Is it true that you taught yourself to use an anti-tank javelin by watching YouTube videos and playing video games? Is that true?
Absolutely, yes, that's true. That's in the East. So it's funny because there's so many things I remember with just. You see the picture, but I see a bunch of things behind what happened just with this kind of setup, right?
Yeah.
And that's a javelin, by the way.
Yeah.
It's pretty clumsy. It looks like you can just stake, you can shoot, and it's going to be easy, but it's not that easy. There's a bunch of buttons. It's not that easy. And we were like in the East, not far from Izium, by the way. So at that time, you have to remember, we won this Battle of Kiev. And I was saying, okay, Kiev was a point where we decided, okay, would it be a long war or short war? So if they win Kiev, the Russians, it's going to be a short war, most likely. So it's going to be collapsing everywhere. But now we went on the path of the long war, which we are still in war now, right? And then the Russians were like, okay, the Russians, they retreated from Kiev. It's not good. They didn't look good, but they still retreated. So if they really get angry, the Russians, they're going to get what they want. So then they said, if you remember that, they said, okay, we're going to go on the east and we're going to take the big chunk of Donbass, right? There's going to be two pinces, one from the north and one from the south. And if you remember that point, it was on the news, everything, we're tracking the convoys. You remember that maybe? They like, let's say, they were like, I don't know, I don't remember, let's say 100 kilometers convoys. From the north, so they were saying, okay, the convoy is this big first convoy is coming, and there's going to be another one and another one.
Yeah, we saw a lot of them stop for some reason, right?
And then this amazingly big and mighty convoys. You know, the Russians are angry now. They understand that they're gonna have to use their might, but we're like, okay, if they really get angry, we're gonna be in trouble. So I was on the north side. So there were two pinces, one coming from the north and one coming from the south, right after Kiev. And I was basically on this on trying to stop the northern pins, you know. And we were moving before the rest of the troops. So it was a bit like Kiev, you know, sending a bunch of troops. It's all chaotic. Try to just hold it as long as you can while we send more reinforcement. You know, so that was the plan. We were so outnumbered. There were tanks everywhere. We had very low quality troops. I was with a small group of special forces, but we were embedded in territorial defense. They had no experience. They didn't know how to use a javelin. We have to teach them how to use 50 cal. There was other Americans, by the way, at that place in the east, and we had to teach them on the spot how to shoot a machine gun. We had two machine gun 50 cal with I think 500 rounds each, which is not a lot. We had two tanks. One was behind the line and not trying not to get killed because if he was exposed, he would just be destroyed by the Russians. They had everything. They had helicopters, planes, lots of tanks, and there was one other tanks hidden in the front of the city, but it was hidden, so maybe it would survive. But we had no way to stop all this firepower. Okay, it was again we had the same strategy as in Kiev to show to make a show force to look like we are more powerful and just to do so many patrols and give the Russians the impression that we were a big force, you know, so we can gain time and then we can have more reinforcement. So that was the plan for a week, I would say, and it was so stressful. It was the most depressing place, this village, that I went in my entire life, I think. And there was one guy, Ukrainian, because it was their first experience as a soldier, who suicided himself. Okay, because it was so depressing, you know, just the mood, and it was rainy, it cold, and it was a spring, but it was so depressing. All these tanks and people getting killed every day, and you know, it looks nicer on the news on YouTube, but when we are at the front, it's pretty horrible, to be honest. And yeah, this guy suicided himself. You had We were all bunched up in the basement of school, and some guy with sleeping bags, and every day we had to roll the sleeping bags of the guys not coming back from patrol and being killed, right?
Hmm.
So it was terrible, terrible, terrible. And by the way, I was sleeping in not in the basement because it was so depressing in the air and everything. It was so confined. I slept in the a teacher's room upstairs, so it was empty. I was the only one sleeping upstairs. I was in the whole building at some point. It felt like a horror movie at night with the winds and the artillery and the shooting. And I was the only one sleeping there at some point because, but the air was fresh, you know, so it felt good. But anyway, the problem with this kind of situation, the tactical situation, was that we had a few javelins. I think we had like maybe six missiles, but the problem we had, you know, the thing that I'm holding on the picture, maybe you can show it again. Yes. So we had this big tubes that you see. That's the missile. The guided missile is there, but on the left, what I'm holding is called the controller. But you can hook it up to the main missiles, and you can remove it and use it on another piece. But it's not something you can do easy. No, it's not like you can under stress when there's a tank 15 meters away from you. You can do it without training. You have to train. You have to be proficient with it. There's a bunch of buttons. The thermal is not like you open it and a second after it's going to be ready. It takes maybe 2 minutes. And I remember that the Russians were shooting with 210 millimeters artillery, so big artillery on our place. It was shaking like in the movies, like the dust coming out from the place. And I remember that I was scavenging for batteries, and we had no batteries. So controller in the big box, no batteries, two controllers, and I was like, okay, there's only there's two controllers one of the batteries dead. They're not rechargeable. They're not meant to be like recharged. There's a model that you can recharge, but there's no way this one is not rechargeable. It's 4 hours each. We have one left, in fact. So I scavenged in the place with the weapons and among the munitions while the Russians were shooting artillery, and there were people dying. I was like, okay, that's critical that I found out the battery. So I was making call to people because we had starting. So I was like, okay, we need batteries because there are tanks everywhere. There's like tens of tanks. You can see them everywhere. They were just like on the road, and they were still far. They were like maybe 3 kilometers, 4 kilometers. So almost within range, and sometimes they were coming close and kill people. But still, the Russians were hesitant to approach because they felt that maybe we might be bigger. So, but I felt like they were feeling that we were not that strong. So I felt like they were like slowly getting in confidence, the Russians. And I was looking at the situation. I was like, okay, that's not a good place for a sniper. I don't have all the sniper equipment. My range is not good in this kind of setup. I have no rangefinder. I have a short barrel sniper rifle, so my effective range is maybe 700 meters. But in Donbass, in the east, you see the tank is going to be typically at 2-3 kilometers. They have huge thermal vision. They can shoot you. You won't even see them. They're going to be behind the forest. They have guided missiles. They have artillery. They have drones. They have helicopters, rockets, name it. And the guy without a rangefinder, without protection, and with a sniper. So I was thinking, okay, I'm a sniper, but I'm a soldier first, right? So I have to win this war. And winning means destroying these tanks. There's no way I can shoot anybody because they're too far. I don't have the equipment because as a sniper, I was not well equipped that much. I had a good sniper rifle, but it wasn't that much. The range wasn't that good. And no rangefinder, no spotting scope, no such things. And I was, okay, I have to switch to being anti-tank guy, right? Because that's how I'm going to win this thing. I didn't know how to use this javelin, but I downloaded on starting the manual. It's a film manual, the American. It's the FM something, I don't remember. And I read to the PDF while there was artillery. And I was like, okay, that's how you turn it on. But it wasn't that clear, It was like, okay, I think that button does that, but I'm going to have one time to test it in the front line. So I'm better be sure about this button. Was like scrolling to my PDF. And I was like, and at some point I was like, okay, I need to see how it feels like. So I went on to YouTube, and by the way, I think it's my history is still there. And I went into how to use a javelin. I want to see it, the control. I don't care about I don't care about the missiles blowing up a bunch of stuff. I want the technical knowledge, right? Because that's what I need. so I was looking on YouTube with startings. We had startings, the good thing. It wasn't cut by artillery yet. So I was looking, and at some point I searched, and there's nothing. There's no tutorial. There's nothing showing me how the buttons are working and everything. I was like, how is it working when I aim? Is it locking blinking? Is it blinking meaning it's not locked on the target? Or is it like when it stopped blinking, it's locked? I had to know this kind of details, right? Because under stress, you have a tank, let's say 300 meters rushing. You cannot like, what I'm going to do, should I press the trigger? And it's complicated. You have two triggers, one for tracking and one for shooting. So there's a bunch of buttons, and it's not simple. It looks simple, but it's not. So what I was looking is for the feeling. So finally, I found a game. And this kind of game, video game, first person, that they're so realistic that they make the experience feel like the reality.
God,
thank you for that, because it served me. So I was like, okay, it looks very real. Yeah, the button is the same. You see it's in 3D. You have exactly the same button. If I compare to my PDF, it's the same aiming system, so it looks pretty realistic. So I think they made the point to be a realistic game. And I looked at the game a lot, and I felt, okay, the blinking means, and now I don't remember exactly, to be honest. So maybe I'm going to say something false technically, but you get the point. But I was, okay, the blinking means it's tracking, and when you have this, let's say, square around the target, stop blinking. So you have this two trigger, you have the cover over the trigger. So you press the first trigger, that means track. Blink, 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 blink. You have to switch for the modes. Let's say top attack or direct mode. Direct, it goes direct, and top, it goes up, and then it tries to hit top. So I was like, okay, it's gonna blink, 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 blink. Stop blinking. That means the information is transferred to the missiles. Then I have to pull the other cover on the other trigger and then press, and then hope for the best, right? But it's a fire forget weapon.
Oh, you're the best.
So that was my training. So with PDF and the game, that was my reality. We had 4 hours battery, so on the system for the whole village, the whole place. We had maybe, I don't know, 20 tanks in just our place, waiting to rush towards us. And but I knew that the Russians, because I was looking on the internet a bunch of information from everywhere, because we had starting again, and I was like, okay, the Russians, they have a weakness. They have lots of equipment, they have lots of missiles, they have lots of stuff, but they lack one thing that they have now: it's manpower. They don't have, because I was looking with my binos, with everything at the tanks, and we did reconnaissance, we did a bunch of patrols, and there's lots of details I'm not talking about, but I had this feeling, okay, the Russians are not having the manpower, so they can't assault with infantry the village. So that means they're going to be very cautious. There's going to be lots of tanks. That's another reason why, as a sniper, I wasn't useful at that point, because at that point the Russians were outnumbered, but very well equipped and professional. Now it's the opposite. The situation is that Ukrainians are getting more outnumbered because the Russians, they have more troops, because they're a bigger country, but the Ukrainians are getting more professional and better equipped. So it's like the opposite. So now it's a better time to be a sniper, to be honest. But at that point, it wasn't, in the Donbass in the east, it wasn't good for sniper at all. We're not miracle soldier. We can't do anything. If there's 3 tanks at 3 kilometers, there's no way with guided missiles, there's no way we can hit that tank with the 338 without rangefinder. With the javelin, I could, though. That's the thing. So that's why I had to switch to being anti-tank. 4 hours battery. The other batteries wasn't working, because I suspect that all the soldiers without experience, they were just taking the controllers, putting the big batteries, and just trying it just because they were curious. You have this anti-tank stuff, you want to learn how it's working, so you test it out, you put the battery, turn it on, but you have 20 guys turn it on and back on, off, back on. At some point the battery's going to be depleted. And I think that's what happened with the first battery. So we had one battery. So I had to call a bunch of people behind, and I said, please send batteries, because we have 6 missiles, I think. I don't remember exactly. We had 2 controllers, but 1 4 hours battery. That's all we have to defend all these tanks. That's the only guided missiles that we have, the 6 against. And if we use all of them, there's still tanks, Russian tanks. We are in trouble. So that's kind of thing that of tactical.
So what happened? What happened? Did you?
Yeah, come on, tell us.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna talk about a few patrols. Again, terrible disappointment. It's gonna be. What you're gonna see, our war is for real. First patrol, was it the first patrol with Javelin? No, I'm not sure. I know it wasn't the first, but it was a good one. So I went into a tree line. I was hiding. And by the way, just a funny side thing, I was bringing food from a local merchant, and I wanted to do a picture like for promotions, So, just for on the front line, hey, I have your candy.
You're always influencing. You live in the digital world. Doesn't matter if you're in a theater or
just for fun, I wanted to take a picture and just say, hey, by the way, your candies are amazing. So they are the front thing in Ukraine. So thank you for that. Just for fun. It wasn't even promotion. I was not publishing it. It was just for fun. But I had these candies in the backpack. That's just something I don't talk about. It's just another detail. So I went on that mission. Many things happened, but one of the things, we went to a tree line, and then I had these missiles. I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it. It's gonna be very fun. And I went to the side of the forest, and then I was with a bunch of territorial defense soldiers, but they had no training, and they didn't understand how dangerous war is with all these powerful weapons, tanks, rockets, and so on. and they were undisciplined, you know. And I had shadow. I was hiding in the bush, you know, with the missiles on the back and ready to be shooting. And at some point, I hear a big bang, you know, and I was like, "What the fuck is that?" You know, and it was shelling going overhead, you know. And I realized that it was a Ukrainian tank shooting at some other tanks, Russians one. But I felt like the Russians, Ukrainians could not see well because they were hidden, probably because they didn't want to get killed themselves and they were outnumbered. But I was like, okay, I was locating all the Russians. It was T-72. There was a bunch of tanks. It was still a bit too far. I think they were maybe 3 kilometers, 2.5. I think the Javelin is 2.5 or 3 kilometers. I'm not sure about it, but they were a bit too far, but almost within range of the Javelin. And I was like, okay, let's wait for them to approach. And I was hiding in the bush, you know, just by the forest. But I was like, okay, we have to be very careful because the two tanks, there was a tank exchange, basically. They were shooting over our heads, you know.
Jesus.
And I was like, okay, we have to be very careful because the Russians up there, they're a bunch of tanks. We are in their vision, you know. They see tanks, you know. Let's say they have a bunch of fields and forests, and they see maybe the Ukrainian tanks. But if they are being careful, they're gonna see maybe me in the field, you know, just under. So we have to hide, basically. That's the thing I want to explain here. So I was like very careful not to be exposing myself because I knew, okay, they're gonna see me if I move, right? Because they have these powerful optics; they can see very far. Tanks, you know, they are like big snipers. And but at the same time, the territorial defense were very impatient, and they were like agitated in the forest, maybe I don't know, 20 meters, 50 meters from me, and they were moving and making noise. I don't know why they did that, to be honest. But I was busy trying to track and locate because I was sending the locations to the drones and a bunch of people on the radio. I was doing my reconnaissance sniper stuff, right? Locating the enemy and so on. And because it's not just killing people, it's always reconnaissance information. That's the role of the sniper, but that's another thing we can talk about. But I was taking notes and doing my job, but I was busy, right? I was focused on the battlefield in front of me. And on the side, I was looking, and why are they all moving? And I don't understand why they are agitated. And I screamed to Shadow, my Canadian friend. I said, please, your job now is just to keep discipline, bring them in somewhere hidden. You don't do that. It's very dangerous to just move around, and it's dangerous. Don't do that. They're gonna see us, right? And at some point, I was looking, and there was one T-72 going down the hill, and I was like, I'm gonna get that guy because he's getting winning range. Cool. So turning on the Javelin, I turn it on. Good. It's getting ready. Okay, I can see the village in front of me. Okay, like a sniper, right? But with a Javelin sniper rifle. I place it, switch to binos. I wait. Okay, he's going downhill, downhill, downhill. Good, good, good. He's getting within range. I don't have rangefinder, so I have to look on the map that I downloaded. No equipment again, so I have to make with what I get. To what I have. So I look on the map that I downloaded offline. Obviously, there's no internet anywhere at that one in front. And I'm like, okay, he's, I don't know, maybe let's say 3 kilometers. He's going to be like at 2.5 in this tree line. So I'm going to be ready to shoot. And then at some point, I was like, okay, soon he's going to go downhill, downhill, good, good, good. And then I felt something. And I turned around. There was Ukrainian soldiers standing up like it was nothing, with the AK-47 sling, like standing. I was like all hiding in the bush, and he was like standing like this, like there was nothing. And I was like, what are you doing? And then 2 seconds after, a big explosion in front of us, big one, the big stars of dust. And then obviously the time they saw us, so they were shooting shells in front of us, but it was downhill, so they were hitting in front of us, but the stars of dust were just exploding in front of us, but it wasn't that accurate. And I knew that because we were not in the forest, and that's another thing I was thinking about, it was better not to be hiding in the forest, because in the forest, maybe 20, 50 meters away. If they hit, let's say, a tree, the explosion would spread all the shrapnels and everything, and maybe I would have been killed. But because it was just grass and long grass and a hill, it was very hard for the Russians to aim precisely. You know, I knew that technically, so maybe that just detail saved my life that day. But anyway, when they were those explosion, I knew, okay, that's game over for today, because now we're located, and if I'm located, that means it's almost like, and I cannot. You have to be smart, right? If you're not smart in war and you want to be like, let's fight to the end and never surrender, just fight, 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 fight. Do that, and then you're gonna get killed. You have to be smart. You have to think about the tactical situation, and the tactical situation now was, okay, we're located because of undiscipline and because they're not experienced. The young guy, they don't have experience in war. They think that the tank is far. It's not dangerous. It's why hide? They cannot get us, right? It's 3 kilometers so far. Mm-hmm. But in reality, they can, right? It's modern warfare. So that's one situation. Terrible disappointment. I was not able to shoot the tank because there was a guy. That's one patrol. There was other dramatic events that happened after, but on other patrols, people getting killed in similar situation. But yeah, so you see why training matters. We have to transmit the knowledge, and because there's so many guys being killed right now. Now it's a bit better because now the Ukrainians, they have so many stories about their friends being soldiers and being killed or severely wounded, that they tend to be like, okay, I think it's going to be very terrible if I'm going there, so I'm going to be cautious. But there's a lot of soldiers, especially I think at the beginning, they were like, okay, Ukraine is winning, I think it's going to be good. And they were underestimating the power of modern weaponry, the guided missiles and this kind of stuff. You can hit a window 3 kilometers away with such thing, right? So lots of guys were killed because they just underestimated how dangerous this kind of system can be. Yeah.
Yeah, you really kind of paint that picture of like, we're sitting here, like I can see Alex's face when you're talking about the javelins, and I'm like, and you're like, oh yeah, and then we had this battery, so we got all the javelins working, and I'm like, well, then what happened next? Like, we're all stuck in those stories, but there's
so many things that, again, there's so many details sometimes I don't talk about because it's it's going to be so long. I'm writing a book, by the way. That's one place I'm going to place more details. And one of the goal of the book is to basically spread the knowledge, to say, here is the reality of war. How do you win it? Because sometimes war looks messy, it looks chaotic, it is bloody. It feels like, even when you win during war, it feels like you're losing, because it's a big. It looks like you're losing because let's say
because it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Yeah, but it's insanity.
Why? It's insanity, and at some, maybe you can talk about the human aspect of war and how you feel in this kind of stuff. Yeah. There's so much thing we can talk about, but technically, in war, you feel like you're almost losing all the time, because let's say that you send 50 rounds of artillery, which happened, that I saw, in some tree line, let's say, right, and then it all explodes. Doesn't look, you see explosions, but they're still far and doesn't look that impressive. But if you are the guy in the trenches, maybe 5 guys got killed, so it looks a lot, it's way worse. The story, depending on which side, is going to be very different. So I think when we talk about our story, soldier, we tend to talk about dramatic events that happen on our sides. Mm-hmm. So it gives the impression that it's always bad. You won't say, oh, we sent 50 rounds in the tree line in the building got destroyed, but I don't know what happened to the guy. There was somebody inside, we don't know, maybe. So it doesn't look that impressive as a story. As if you say, I was in a building, 2 guys exploded beside me, no heads in the body anymore. In this kind of story, it looks very dramatic, and you tend to tell the story, right? So it looks like you're almost losing all the time. It gives this impression.
Hey, so
Wally.
real quick question. Sorry, Locke. Real quick question. So you've explained sort of how you've engaged. You engaged with Russian troops. We watched it over here, and like Alex and I have talked about it. We've talked about it on the show all the time.
Yeah.
Why convoys stopped. What the Russian troops are really like. Now it's just a really simple question because you fought these guys, right? Are they the 6 dressed as a 9, or like are they a 3 dressed as a 9? Like are they the most incompetent? Like did they?
Please don't tell me you're not a trooper fan, Wally.
Yeah.
A trooper fan? What is that? Okay.
Don't worry. Lock with the music reference.
Okay.
A couple buttons.
My impression of the Russians, right?
Yeah. Like because
Yeah.
you know they said they'd walk over everybody in 3 days. Alex is living proof they're not. Or clean. You've got everything going on in Donbass. We've heard stories of how absolutely fucking useless they are, but they're still there. What was your encounter like with them? Are they just terrible?
Okay.
Do they have bad equipment? What's the deal?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna give the same advice I'm giving to a bunch of new soldiers that are soon to be going to the front. Okay. Let's say Ukrainian soldiers. You watch YouTube, you watch TikToks, you watch Instagram, this movie, and you see drones dropping grenades on the Russians. They run away and they are like praised. And then you see this editing like 20 minutes more, short clips of tanks being blown up, and then you laugh about it. There's music on top of the videos, and then you watch a lot of this kind of stuff, and you might think, oh, it's gonna be fun, man. We're gonna go to the front and we're gonna kill Russians, right? And then you get to the front and realize that it's on both sides that this kind of stuff happens. So we must be very careful, because it looks easy when you look on YouTube and this kind. But to be honest, you go on the front, the reality is the tanks are pretty terrible. There's nothing that scares me more than tanks. I'm scared by tanks. I hate them. They're very powerful. I love them to have them, but they make me very scared. It's almost like I shake when I see tanks approaching. I hate this. They're so quick. They can shoot so quick that you don't. It's not like artillery that you're gonna have like a warning. It's like it's gonna happen. I got killed I was close to being killed by tanks so many times. It's like I hate tanks. Okay, but at the same time, I understand. What I would be good at is to lead a tank assault, because I understand how it could break the will of fight if you have so many tanks mass at some point. Because it's so terrible. I hate this. But what I'm saying to people going to the front the first time, don't watch too much videos, because you're gonna have this impression that it's always on one side that we're making casualties. Reality is on both sides it's bloody and not pretty. It's there's lots of casualty on both sides. It happens. And when there's a tank, it's not always like in YouTube that it's gonna blow up. A tank is a hard target. There's a reason why everybody wants to kill a tank. It's because it's so effective, right? It's not like we have this impression that tanks are praised and that they go somewhere and then they're gonna blow up in like 5 minutes. It's not reality. The reality is that it's pretty dangerous. There are machines built to kill people. They're armored. They move quick. They move in all kind of terrains. They have guided missiles, sometimes thermal barracks missile, guided missile. They have a bunch of stuff. I don't like see tanks approach. And sometimes what happens is that let's say there's a sniper. That's one example why you can't shoot too many guys. That's something that happens right now in the front with unexperienced new snipers. They go to the front. They go to the tree line, and let's say they shoot a guy. Okay? They shoot a guy in the trench that was looking with the binocle. Let's say that's the situation. He shoots, and then, wow, I got him. Nice. And then what happened? There's a tank, maybe 500 meters. And then there's a Russians saying, okay, there's a sniper, I think he's there, blah, blah, blah. And then there's going to be somebody, and he has powerful thermal. Not anymore. Now the tanks, they're low quality. They are not as good quality as the beginning of the war, but let's say a year ago, they still do, but less number, this powerful thermal, and they're going to spot you. And then you're going to get killed. You can't kill 40 Russians. You're going to get killed way before that, I guarantee. Lots of snipers were killed by tanks. And the first patrol, by the way, So the one I was talking in some, not in some detail at the beginning of this talk.
Very hypothetically.
Transmissions. Huh? Yeah, yeah. But no, that's a real one. So that it's something that I saw and I went through. So we went to do this patrol to this building, a nice building with coffee machine, urban. Alex knows that. And there are nice places in urban, new buildings. It looks like this, like my house. Espresso machine, flat screen TV, sofas, furniture's nice place. Went to this place. It still smelled like the perfume, the smell of the woman like dresses. It felt like it still smelled, in the bedroom. And we were so quiet. And I said to Shadow, they were another team of sniper in another apartment. And I was saying to Shadow, which had no experience in this kind of war and any war, in fact, I was saying, be very careful. It's so quiet, but maybe the Russians are right in front of us. We don't know that. That's the mission. We have to find them. But in finding them, maybe we're gonna go face to face with them, right? We don't know what's gonna happen. So no noise. Be very careful, and please stay in this other room in case there's something happening to me watching. And then we're gonna move like snipers, right? Right? You're gonna rest behind, let's say, in the hallway of the apartment where there's more protection, and the one watching in front is going to be very quiet, no noise, because they might be across the street, which they were. But we know that it looks so boring in a way, just artillery shooting in the neighborhood, but not that much. A few bullets hole in the window because there was firefight for some reason. Somebody shot at that window before, but just a few holes, right? And the wind was pushing the curtains. It was so quiet, and but the noise could go through the holes made by the impacts, right? So I was like, okay, we have to be very careful not to make any noise and not to move too close from the windows, because maybe the curtains were like transparent, you can see through, but it was distorted. It was very important to move any curtains because maybe there's somebody watching right there. So don't move anything, don't make any noise, and assume that Russians are there because we don't know. Again, war is a terrible disappointment. You think it's going to be this glorious fighting. There's going to be a red carpet. You're going to wait 5 minutes. You're going to kill 10 enemies. Then you're going to go back. You're going to have medals, and then you're going to be a hero. That's not reality. Reality is you're going to be bored and bored and bored and bored, and then you're going to be like undisciplined, and then you're going to get killed because you're undisciplined by somebody, a tank that you never saw, or artillery round, or whatever. That's the reality of war. Terrible disappointment. So now back to our story. I'm there. I have this professional mindset of being very careful. You never know, right? Sniper job is boring. That's the reality. It's not like in the movies. You wait, observe, and then no noise, and then an explosion. In my brain, everything was kind of slow in a way, because I remember that there was this first remote explosion, like you can hear the rounds going out of the thing that was shooting. It was a big explosion, like a shell. I could tell it was not artillery. It was not like far artillery shooting something, right? It wasn't like that. It was something close, like maybe 300 meters, maybe. In my brain was like, okay, that's a big thing coming, right? It's not like random thing. And now I know it was a slow moving projectile with a big, I guess, explosive in it. So the tanks usually you don't hear the warning. It's like, poof, it happened. But some kind of ammunition, they are slow. They're heavier. They have more charge and they go slower. Okay. And a split second after that, it hit right in front of me. Like you see the house, my place now where I am. Just imagine that's a window behind me. I'm looking at the window, and it was like a few inches on the side, on the concrete structure. So just imagine all the wall will be a window. It was larger than that, but just imagine I was pretty much the same distance. And you have this concrete structure on that side when you see the Ukrainian painting now. So we had this structure, and then I remember exactly all the details. And I saw this big explosion, smashing all the window out, all the curtains flying, like ghosts. I remember that, and I remember that I saw the explosion. Like it feels strange to describe that way. It looks like a sun, like a very quick and sudden sun, very violent. And it feels like, these following, certificates, certificates with the golden stars, you know what I mean, with the golden
Yeah,
stamp,
yeah, yeah.
certificates, diplomas, right? It looks like this, a very like violent certificate stamp, so to speak, with lots of pointing, hedges, very violent, just by the structure. And I knew that it wasn't good. It was right in front of me. But just imagine that the tank would have shot a few inches to his right, because I think it was maybe 4 inches, by the corner. But because the structure was in concrete, was big, then it didn't blow up everything except the window. But it wasn't good. And then it started shooting, and it was very messy. And I think that the Russians didn't see me. And I went back to this place, by the way. And because again, like I said before, it's like you don't know when you are in the battle, when you are in some patrols, you have this bubble, this tunnel vision, right? You are in your little world. You don't see, you don't have much information, so you don't know exactly what happened. And after the facts, okay, I think that happened. I talked to other guy and blah blah blah. I went back to that place, and the first time, and I have a picture of it. We did a small documentary about it, and we did a bunch of stuff. And I remember we went in front of it. It's by the hospital, by the way, Alex, the military hospital, New Condos.
Yeah.
And I went there, and I was like, okay, is it my memory, adrenaline, or something? I think it was a few inches by the window, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's my memory is faulty, right? I'm not sure. And I was like, if I remember, the Russians were there, and the shells would hit, and it was exactly how I remember it. Exactly. I have a picture of it. I have everything, and it was a few inches. We see the impacts. We see all the damages to the structure, and it was exactly there. And my assessment, because I went there back this summer, and some apartment are still okay. So people went back living there. By the way, okay. The windows are new. There's some buildings that are fully destroyed. You cannot go in. They're like they removed the buildings, right? Alex can give you more details about that. But there's some building non-existent anymore. They're just rubble. But this building, this particular one, was still okay. So there's still people there. But I think that the rumors about me being there spread after the event, and they know that I was somewhere. But we went knocking with the crew filming, right? And we were like, there were still traces of fire, in the hallway. And then we knocked. We were like, what's gonna happen? And I was thinking, will the people be happy to see me? Will they be like, oh, I don't want war anymore? It's like no uniform. I'm tired. I don't like it, right? And obviously, Ukrainians are like, thank you, and they're like surprised, and yes, we knew you were there, but we didn't know you went into exactly our apartment. So, and this particular one for the stories, I remember exactly all the details. Everything was the same, so it felt like crazy, because it's like, okay, the coffee machine is the same. And I knew so much details. I was like, okay, I think that you moved this furniture, and it was on the other side. And she said, yes, you're right, it was on the other side. And I was like, okay, I think this frame because there was a frame with Jesus, typical like Ukrainian Orthodox frame. I said, I think it wasn't there. And I said, yes, you're right, it wasn't there. I was like, yeah, nice. And then I talked to her, and she had other information about the other apartments, and my assessment of what happened during this patrol. And she was very, very proud and very happy, and pictures, and the Ukrainians are like, thank you, thank you, thank you, Jaku, Jaku, Jaku. But I'm like, thank you Ukrainians, because to be honest, it's not just Ukraine that the Ukrainians are defending. we feel like we're helping Ukraine, but the fact is, if the front line, if they take Ukraine and then they get more powerful, and then the Chinese and all these situation, it's not going to be pretty, you know, if they take Ukraine and the front line is at Poland. Yes, we have NATO, we can defend, but we don't want that. So Ukraine, yes, is forced to defend herself, but we have to thank Ukrainian because they say maybe we're very lucky in the Western world. Maybe we have good equipment, we have good money, but do we have the courage of the Ukrainians? I'm not sure about it. No, but Ukrainians, they proved it many times. But anyway, every time Ukrainians say thank you, I'm like, okay, no, thank you for that, because your country is destroyed, and thank you for holding the line, because I'm not sure we will be able to do it. Yes, we have good equipment, but you proved that you can use it well. But anyway, that's another thing. But I talked to this lady, and she told me, okay, there were lots of bullets hitting the other apartment where the snipers were, and he was wounded. And that's one of the snipers who grabbed me at the train station, by the way, the one I told you before. And he was wounded. And I think that's him who made a mistake of some sort. Something happened. He was detected. And then I think what happened is that the Russians they were in the hospital, right? They were hidden in this military hospital in front of this apartment. And I think they said, just imagine the situation. They were with the radio and they were like, okay, we got the Ukrainians. They are maybe 6th floor. I don't remember exactly which floor. Maybe let's say the 6th. They are the 6th floor, and maybe there was some miscommunication. There was some confusion about the location of what they saw, and the tanks, which was maybe hidden. Maybe he wasn't seeing all the windows because he was fearing anti-tank weapon, right? And he was like, okay, I'm gonna shoot there where I see, and that was my place. And maybe just a few inches to the right for the tanks, it would have been my hand. I would have died there because there's no way I could have survived to that. I was right in front of the window. I was just this distance from my wall here. Just imagine this wall is a window and the shells hit in my face at the window. There's no way I could have survived to that, right? And this kind of situation happened a few times with tanks. That's why I don't like him. But in this situation, that's the week when the Russians announced that I was dead, by the way. So in a way, I was almost killed. But maybe the reality would have been, okay, he got killed, but not in Mariupol, but he got killed, right? So yes, and then other things happened during that patrol. But the good news is that we had the location of the Russians. So they were there. So and then we planned other stuff after that. But it was a big day, and it was the first real combat patrols for Shadow. And I remember when the tank hit, he said, "What the fuck is that?" No, he was like, "Thanks, thanks." Yeah, it's not just a movie now; it's a real tanks, and they were there and they want us. So
amazing, truly amazing. When you are speaking about it, and I know all those places, I can picture it in my mind. I can really see those places, and the way you are speaking about it, it's just like watching a movie. Listening to it.
Well, and you made a really good point, Wally, about Ukraine fighting this war for us, and I think you made an even more poignant point about the type of. I mean, I'm 53, and listen, I know there are people. I live in a country. We're very lucky to live in Canada that has not seen any combat on our own soil. And unless you actually seek it out, you're never going to see what you saw. You can live your entire life in this country with absolutely zero connection to war, with zero combat, never seeing it, living a very good, happy, healthy life. And I just don't know if we're aware of that. I don't know if we have a sense of what Ukraine is going through right now and what they're doing for the rest of the world. And maybe history, maybe it will be.
Yeah, and I think that's a great question. And I would ask Alex, who's been like, I want him to ask some questions too, because this is your home country. You're listening to him talk about buildings that you're intensely familiar with. Maybe some you've been in. Maybe it might have been one of your buildings. It could be where you live. I mean, you know, the story about finding batteries. Your BMW, they tried to pull the battery out of it, right? Couldn't do it. You know, like you're doing the geography here. How do you feel listening to the story of, you know, what went into either freeing Irpin, firefights in your hometown, and the geography, because you've been, you know, busy helping and doing things to make this possible, right? Like, how does this make you feel kind of recounting all this stuff, listening to Wally talk about it?
Oh, I'm just speechless. I'm all ears and listening to all those stories and reflecting and reflecting of the first weeks of our life in Irpin. And when we were leaving Irpin, Wally was actually making his way into Irpin. Yeah. And that makes it is really fascinating. This is kind of crazy. Me, Ukrainian, of course, yeah, I was protecting my 15 days old son and my wife, and evacuating the family from the city. And Wally, father of two children, making his way from Canada to Irpin to protect us. I mean, that's really, truly amazing. And I feel such a great gratitude to you, Wally, and all other fighters of the International Legion who are fighting here together with Ukrainians, with us, for the values, for the world's values, and the freedom as a concept.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, you know, it's funny because I know you guys connected, you and Wally connected on Facebook. But as someone who was involved in the beginning stages of, as you point out, running into a city everybody was running away from to give your city back to you, it's got to be weird sitting here on the phone with him on a live stream right now, right?
Oh yeah, that is really amazing.
And next time I come, maybe we can have a nice meal with Bosch.
Yeah.
You know, I did an interview and there was a Ukrainian interview where they asked me, why are you coming back again, and blah blah blah, and I was like, it's because of Bosch, you know, soup. It's so good, so that's the reason I'm coming back.
Attaboy.
Can I ask a question, Wally? One thing that we have, and maybe you have a story that can support it, but one of the things that a very vivid memory I have of this conflict from my seat and being introduced to Alex and having him on this podcast multiple times in the last year and a half plus, is, and you've made reference to how crazy Ukrainians are, right? You said it more than a couple of times, and I know you're being endearing, but I was amazed at their, I don't know how else to put it, a bizarre and kind of warped sense of humor. I remember one video early on in the conflict where these guys were on a corner of a building and they had a hockey stick and they were sticking a jacket out into the street, and then the Russians would shoot at it and then they'd pull it back. And they were laughing.
Yeah, that's all you heard was laughter.
You couldn't. It's war. They're shooting at each other, and I had tears rolling down my face. Not because it was funny, but because of how hard they were laughing. It was, and I like you've lived with these people. You've fought with these people. You broke bread with these people. You must have a very interesting take on them culturally.
You know, this kind of, we can do a 3 hours interview just talking about this kind of stories that I saw. I'm gonna tell you one, okay, and it's typical. I went to Irpin, almost encircled. There's almost no place for us, and our sector was almost encircled. There were tanks and there were a bunch of situations. The situation I told you about, the map, the map room in the pool table. And by the way, it was a place called, I'm gonna say it in English. I'm not sure how Ukraine, but in the city of Irpin, this first place, I'm telling you, with the pool table and everything, was called the House of the Riders, I think. Do you know that place, Alex? Do you know where I'm talking about? It's an old Soviet building, not far from the bridge where there's our trains. Do you know that? It's a big very massive. It's called the House of the Riders, I think. I don't know how
Oh yeah,
you see it.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's called
that's the
Freezer,
place.
and with a nice
Yeah,
park.
yeah, we call it the freezer because
Yeah.
it was because old Soviet. We call it the freezer because it was starting to be warmer a bit, the weather, but still, no matter the sun, no matter the temperature, no matter the air, it felt like crazy cold inside it. But the protection in this building was good, and I went there the first time, and after the map room briefing, I was like. I was talking to a friend. He's called nicknamed Bruno, Ukrainian special forces guy, very tall, very like fit, very athletic, and he was very smiley and funny. And I was like, "You telling me that how many Russians in front of us in our sector?" He said, about 300." I said, "Okay, how many here?" About 30." There are more people, or that's just the place we are? Oh, there's a few, but it's about 30. I said, okay. Do they have tanks? Yes. They have helicopters? Yes. We have anti-tank weapons? Not many, but you have a few. Okay. We have no tanks. A few. And I said, there are 300, we are 30, right? He said, yes, smiling. And I said, are you sure? Yes. And he was smiling all the time. I was like, you fucking crazy. I watched movie with 300 against the Persians, but now we're 30 against 300. So I think it's even worse. But our mission was to look like we were more powerful, just to gain time. But even then, we're on the brinks of pulling back across the river because the pressure was too huge, and the Russians didn't know we were there exactly. But yeah, so typical from the Russians, the Ukrainians, this kind of smiling in the face of death. I've seen it so many times, but at the same time, it's so dangerous because they go. And this guy Bruno, by the way, is wounded now. He was wounded about a year ago, and is in United States, right? By the way, and there's a charity helping with the surgeries and everything. By the way, that's something else. But yeah, so but it's typical of Ukrainians
Just laughing in the
face
face of like being
Yes.
outnumbered 300 to 30. Guys like, oh yeah, no big deal. We got this. Don't worry about it, Wally. It just speaks to like, not encourage or just, just who gives a shit. I mean, we're here to fight for our homeland. I mean, that seemed to be there's so many stories like that. Like you go back to the babushka story. There's a story I think Alex told us on the podcast. And it's not just the babushka throwing jars at drones, but the one that made all those Russian soldiers cakes and filled them with rat poison. And they all started dropping in the forest.
The girls on Tinder and the other dating
Calling
apps
them in.
locating for the artillery, crazy. I had a question for Alex. What was the? I was asking the question. I forgot about the question. Obviously, I'm gonna think about the question after. But yeah, keep going. I just forget about it. Sorry.
No, it just leveled stories in terms of like what you're going back to what you saw, what you experienced with the people in Ukraine, and it's another worldly thing for a guy like Alex to go, I'm going to stick around and I'm going to help out where I can and I'm going to stay in a war zone. When I don't know the actual number of people that have left Ukraine. It's got to be in the millions, 3 to 4 million. And then, sorry, Wally, you wanted to say something. Jump in there. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, I got I remember now the question.
All right.
It's part of the question is gonna come. But what's the name of the camouflage net that all the girls and the babushka are making? The handmade camouflage. There's a name for it in Ukrainian. Alex, what's the name of it? Do you know?
Sitka, маскувальна сітка. That's the mask net. Маскувальна сітка.
Yeah. Silka. Okay. Yeah. Because one thing
Sitka. Yes.
Sitka. Okay.
Yeah.
Because there's it's fascinating. Just this detail. Again, there's so much information in so many details. And with the camouflage net, you're gonna ask, why are you talking about? You're not talking about tanks shooting at you. You're not talking about killing people. You're talking about the camouflage net. Yes. And here's why. When I went into Ukraine, I saw these camouflage net. I was like, there's looking special. They're like handmade. Which sometimes they have like bright colors. Like the person who made that didn't try her or his best to make it camouflage, but there's like a, let's say, orange color. I was like, and you saw so many checkpoints, because at that time there were checkpoints everywhere, checkpoints like maybe each 200 meters there were checkpoint everywhere, which was something very good, by the way, for technical reason we can talk about. But anyway, there were so many checkpoints, and they had all this camouflage with handmade, right? And I was, why are they not using military? Why they don't have the supplies yet? Maybe, but it's still fascinating. And then I learned that the babushka and normal people, teachers, women, anybody, are making these nets. And then I thought, oh man, that's so amazing. Yeah, that's why Ukraine's gonna win. You know, everybody's doing something.
Mhm.
You know, there's so many people. They build nets. You know, even the babushka, they build nets. They put food into the jars, and then people like Alex bring this to the soldiers at the front. They're just with nets. These handmade camouflage net, I can say, they want to win. They fight. They build their own camouflage net. They're to that point. They don't care. They're gonna do whatever it takes to win this one. So I understood right away. Okay, this when somebody explained to me about these handmade nets, they want to win. You know, everybody's contributing to something. And when we went to Irpin, we had some food, and they were salmon. You know, and I was told that in the artillery was falling, and we were eating fresh, salmon, like making sushi. And there was a guy speaking French or Ukrainian, Maxim, which is again another friend who is wounded now. Okay, sadly, many of my friends are wounded or dead. But anyway, at that time he wasn't wounded, and he told me that's a restaurant who, before fleeing out of Irpin, they gave us like all this amazing food. So we had amazingly good salmon while being bombarded by the Russian. So and you can tell that anybody wanted to help. They contributed in some way. They give food. They made these camouflage net. They these jars. They build the ammunition themselves. Anything, they did anything. At some point, I had foods with with boxes like a takeout, right? It looks like a takeout with little hearts,
Jesus.
on it, right, by hand.
In the middle of a war.
I asked, yeah. Well, we had these boxes full of them sometimes, okay, and I remember I took a picture actually, and they were hearts, written on it, and it was the girls and babushka preparing all these foods and giving this food to people like Alex who travel with the artillery and all the danger to the front line. And so we had some food, and when you see this little heart, you feel like there's people behind me supporting me, and I'm not alone in this thing. So it's very powerful. I have a picture of it. It was amazing food.
So
Yeah,
many
let me
stories.
relate to that.
I mean, I feel like we could probably go forever, right? And I feel like we could probably talk forever with you about your experience and being able to connect you with Alex and to talk about where you've been, what you've done, but also getting the backstory and having Alex here in real time to say, yeah, I was at those places, I've been there, and it's not just about confirming that there's an actual war going on in Ukraine. Like, there's a whole bunch of brain dead individuals who seem to think there is, and then you've got brain dead individuals who also believe that somehow this is justified, which absolutely isn't. So to get your experience specifically, the experience that you've had, to be able to kind of talk to some of the more finer points, even Alex, I mean, you're finding things out about something that's been going on in your country for 2 hours, right? Like, or for 2 years in the last 2 hours. You're adding texture and context and some of the barbarism that people from around the world, not just Ukrainian people, but 20,000 foreign fighters that flooded into Ukraine to help out, and getting that context. It's like, and I know that you're still doing the good work, and I know that you're going to be, at some point, obviously going back, and I know there's lots of things you can't talk about, but just the things you've been able to talk about have me wanting to have you back, so we can get the rest of the stories and get into individual stories as you can, because it's just such a wonderful, seeing eyeglass into something that is just it's a political football everywhere else, but for the people of Ukraine, it's life or death every single day.
Can Can we
Yes.
follow you on social
And-
media, Wally, as well? Like, I
Yes,
want to get
yes.
that out before-
So if you want a hub where to find pretty much everything I'm publishing, it's wali.news. As simple as that. So you get there. There's a bunch of links to books, sniper books about Afghanistan, translated in English. At first, I translated myself, by the way, and then I got a professional translator. But yeah, so there's my first book, Afghanistan. Now writing my book about Ukraine. There's a documentary, feature movie as well, project with big Hollywood guys. There's a bunch of projects. So Wali.news, you get the links to the Facebook page, to a bunch of stuff. And maybe I'd like to say something about this documentary project and why in the West, how we feel about this kind of war and situation. Facts are good, but stories are better. Well, my story is maybe inspire others, maybe foreign powers, maybe Ukraine. I think so, because Ukrainians are saying that it was inspiring, especially at the beginning of the war when there was so much hesitation and confusion. But facts are good, stories are even better. We need stories, knowing that there's a cities that got invaded, Bakhmut, let's say. We know it's horrible, but there's nothing like stories. With the documentaries, I try to transmit that stories, because we need to feel, we need to see people that stories happen. We need to see it. And what's special about now, the war is in the East, and the East doesn't look like as much as it look. It's not as, it doesn't look like the West as much as the urban does, right? Urban, you have more McDonald's. I fought near McDonald's, near sushi shop, coffee shop. So I hope that with, let's say, especially a feature movie or documentary, people is gonna see like these kind of things, stories of people through my story, and they're gonna see stories about people getting tortured beside the McDonald's. Their house being put on fire because there's a guy just want to randomly shoot everything that he sees because he wants to have fun with his things. And to feel this kind of stuff, it's even better than to know this kind of stuff, because they're gonna feel how it is. If you get the stories about your house being destroyed and there's a McDonald's there and there's a tank shooting there, it's different, because it's not a documentary about Second World War anymore. It's real stuff. It's modern stuff. So that's the goal with the documentary. And the feature movie, it's even more than that's why I'm pushing. I'm not the producers, I'm not the only one deciding, but I'd like to be more about transmitting this, how it feels, how war feels as a soldier, but also to see this kind of modern setup cities, Ukraine, urban, Kiev, and I hope that the person watching is going to be like, man, it feels like it could happen here around me. So now I feel empathy for Ukrainians, and I think we should support them even more. So that's the goal with all of these projects as well.
No, that's great. Yeah, it's a movie. I think it's you've got a Netflix thing going on that's inspired by your travels, foreign fighters going into.
It's not Netflix. It's not Netflix. It's something else. But
okay, never mind. It's not Netflix.
I can
but
talk about all the
read
commercial details. But yeah,
okay.
Again, distortion. There's a bunch of information floating around.
Yeah. Let's just. Hey, listen. I'll tell anybody anything you want to keep you safe, dude. Whatever you need. Distort away. That's
I'm fake. I'm dead, so I'm just propaganda. So no worries.
Crazy.
We're talking to an AI.
I'm an AI deepfake. That's it.
Yeah.
Let's stay in touch. Wally, I know you got to run. Alex, I know it's late for you. Lachlan has 13 beers to drink. We're holding him up on a Tuesday, Wednesday.
I think I'm going to get a beer too.
Okay.
And I'm going to go coding, because that's my other life.
Yeah.
So we're talking about tanks, talking about code.
Yeah. Hey, nothing like one of the world's deadliest snipers being a computer nerd as well. Isn't that the greatest?
If you want to hire me as a consultant, by the way, dragonaxe.io.
Are we allowed to talk about that? I didn't know if we were allowed to talk about your business. Dragonaxe.io.
Dragonaxe.io. So if you want to send me an email, and if you want to see my start with the Israel searcher about the post-quantum cryptography. Yes, surprise. I know more than thanks. But I'm doing a technology with the searchers from Israel. It's post-quantum cryptography, and then you can check at httpq.io. That's my website. And yeah, so dragonx.io, http.io, wali.news. That's my life on the web.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Wow.
check it out. Yeah, that's what makes me feel like a one-trick pony when you talk to a guy like him, where he's like, "Oh, you're into quantum computing? Oh, no big deal. You're into IT solutions, scaling businesses? No big deal. What do you do on your downtime? Do you go to NASCAR races? No, I go to foreign countries and I take out Russian troops. That's what I do. Oh, great. What do you do? Podcast.
Yeah. Well, hold on, Wally. I had the toilet roll holder fall off in my loft bathroom, and I had to go to Home Depot and get a new one and put it in. Yeah.
I was an expert at using abandoned house. By the way, all you go to the bathroom, how you get water, all this kind of stuff. I was becoming an expert, so that's it for another.
Yeah, where's the
that's another podcast?
Yeah, where's the worst dump you've ever taken?
That's hold on. We need more time.
Yeah, no.
Let's start.
No. We're finishing. Where's the worst dump you've ever taken?
That's a 3-hour podcast. How to shit on the front lines.
Crazy.
So
stop it.
So please vote. Should we talk about it now?
Yeah, right now.
What do you? Well, the worst place I think was the Middle East. You are in a shitty place where the shit place doesn't look like a shit place anymore. I'm just to say that, right? So it was in Middle East. So I think the worst of the worst was, except being between two mountains in Afghanistan, which in a way was very bad. But it was like interesting. It's like camping. But the plane, maybe in a city, I would say.
But is it a strategic problem for you to take a dump on the road? Like, that's my question. Is like, you're sitting there and everybody's like, because listen, hang on, let me tell you something. I'm going to take you through me being a sniper. If I get into small, closed spaces, I have to poop. It's just one of those things that happens all the time. So when you're in the small, closed space and you're looking at these guys, and you got Russians down there, you got Al Qaeda over there, you got ISIS over there, and you go, my God, I'm starting to sweat. I have to poop. And then you're like, whatever you do, don't poop. And you're like, here's the question. Have you ever just had to shit yourself? There's the question.
No, I'm good. So I'm good at control. I can think straight, but I can give you one more detail.
Yeah, please.
It's, there's a good place where you can, pee and they do some stuff. You go on top of some buildings. I'm talking about Ukraine now. You have drains, and the drains, they work no matter if you have electricity, anything, but they are on the top, so you have to be careful about observation. But if they are on the cover and there's no aircraft and such, you have to think that way when you are at the front line. But the drains, they are in the middle of somewhere for the rains. It's a very good place. And one thing I was thinking is not to destroy so many things that after the war people would have to repair everything. So if you destroy, let's say, a toilet or not a coffee machine, but let's say anything that's there, that's you want to make it easy for people like Alex or other urban people who go back to their house, and you don't want to destroy everything. But one thing I can say is I have a picture that I was be very careful not to destroy everything, because I was like, okay, maybe there's going to be peace in 3 weeks, so I'm going to be right. Maybe take food, but that's it. And I have pictures of after, and then you see all this destroyed stuff because there was a shell that hit right that place, and you see the toys, the same toys and in the picture before and after, and you see all this big mess of debris falling, this big holes in the wall because of the explosion, and then I was like, okay, well, maybe it was wasted. But sometimes it's not wasted. But to be honest, I was becoming an expert at choosing the right location for storing water, go to pooping, pissing, this kind of stuff. And the drain on top of buildings sometimes is a good place because it's no maintenance for after the battle. It's just a pipe, basically filtered. And yes, it works no matter if there's electricity, the water. It works all the time. So
you were shitting in Eve's troughs, is what he's saying.
and the rain's gonna wash everything after. So yeah.
very hygienic way.
That's the first interview I think I'm talking about this kind of stuff. So
Better check your rain barrel, Alex.
Yeah. You might want to check your rain barrel for one of those nifty little spike kits.
Alex can say that, he can confirm, but I think the Ukrainians could tell that it was Russians going into their house because it was more messy, right?
I was gonna
think
say that. Yeah, my neighbors actually told me a story of snipers staying in their place on the upper floor of a high-rise building. So they stayed in their apartment. They ate all the food from the fridge, including the frozen meat.
Yeah.
Even though there was no electricity and gas. So no one knows how they cooked it or they just ate it. They pooped all over the entire toilet, and they stole all jewelry that they could find and all the valuables, including the hard drives with their personal family photos.
Yeah.
And at some point, they probably got drunk and lying on the bed, they started shooting at the window because there were, holes from shooting from the internal side of the apartment. And when they were leaving, they left a note that we didn't take the jewelry. Joke.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's obviously Russians. I know that there's another story, a bit more funny maybe, but you're gonna see. There's a guy who said, and maybe you're gonna have similar story as well. The Russians were stealing like smart TVs, and at some point somebody told me that there was this smart fridge, and they were, especially at the end, they like the Russians were like, okay, we're gonna retreat maybe soon, so let's just empty the house. That looks good. So we're gonna stack a bunch of stuff, smart TV, in the back of the truck for let's say the major or the captain or the general, whatever. And then this Ukrainian told me that because of it was a smart fridge. I think it was a few weeks after they could like it was on the map showing in Russia. So they knew exactly where the fridge was in which village in Russia.
I was like, find my iPhone, but you can find your fridge because those Russian pricks stole the whole fucking fridge.
Let's look for the fridge.
Honestly, I think I'd go up there.
At the same, it's funny, but at the same time, it's sad. It's
it is. Yeah,
we make lots of jokes, but it's real fridge. There's the people with not a lot of money. That's one thing very sad. You go into these apartments that's in urban or anywhere in the east, and for you it's just a place you're gonna fight, and you don't care if it's exploding as long as you're not in there. But when you think about it, a house is a house. An apartment, a condo is worth money. So think about it. I was in an apartment that got destroyed, by the way, by tanks and artillery in Irpin. And I remember I took a picture of it. There was this frame of the family, and it was the picture were not whole. They were like in exactly the same furniture, exactly was the same, And they looked so proud. They're like, you saw that the father. I have a picture of this, and there was the father like mimicking that he was doing the breakfast for the family and smiling on the family at the table, and they put picture of themselves in the exact display so that it shows how proud they were of this new house, right? And all destroyed, So now we talk about fridge and smart TV being stolen, but if you think about it, it's pretty sad, These people, they put money, they work for that money, and then it's all destroyed because
their whole lives.
Yeah. So we soldiers tend to laugh about it because we have no other choice. Sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, oh, will I insult Ukrainians because we're making jokes about it? But I'm going to tell maybe one more story. There was this guy fighting in Irpin soldiers, and he was with drones correcting artillery not far from his house in the Russian side, right? And there was a kindergarten far from it. And he was telling me, and he was updating other friends about, oh, your apartment is still good. They are artillery falling, but with the drones, I saw that your house is still good. How crazy just this kind of conversation could be. But anyway, after the battle, finally, there was explosion in front of this house. The guy showed me a picture. You see all the front just being smashed and all this, the cover, But he was laughing about it. He was with his cell phone. He was like, huh, at least I have a house. I'm going to repair it. So he was making joke about it. So even the Ukrainians, they have this. They're very resilient. It's terrible, but at the same time, they were making joke about this other time. There was this condo in a big place, and the guy was monitoring. All is good. That actually that's the thing. That's the same story, I think. And it was like nothing on the building, but there was one hole, one impact. Okay, and it was exactly his apartment. And so they were making joke about it. About I was so unlucky that near the end of the battle, the whole building because of some miracle was left intact, but my apartment was hit. But at least I still have an apartment. So he was making joke about it, and he showed me a picture. But you see how crazy this could be for people there. But the Ukrainians, they're like Alex. They look like they smile and they accept that.
Oh, in the face of it all. Like, that's the most amazing part. Like, how many times have we been on a show, Alex, where, air raid sirens are going off and you're like, oh, there we go again.
Oh, there's another one.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, guys, let's keep talking. It's just amazing. Wally, I'm going to let you go. Alex, I'm going to let you go. Lachlan, I'm going to let you go. Sorry.
Beer time.
Yeah, beer time. Everybody deserves a beer after a 3-hour podcast. Wally, again, where can people catch up with you at Dragon Axe? Where can people learn about your
DragonX.io? There's a start with the post quantum. It's httpq.io, and for Wally, the non-IT side of Wally is wally.news. As simple as that.
Wally.
You have two versions: IT guy or soldiers.
Oh, dude, I like it all.
Wally.news, DragonX.io, httpq.io. That's it.
Quantum computing. IT solutions. That is my friend Wally. That is a sniper, one of the world's deadliest, and a Canadian who just got back from Ukraine, who is still involved in the effort to bring peace to that beautiful region, to people like my friend Alex De Rebekoff, at De Rebekoff on Twitter. Thank you so much for setting this up, my friend. I really, really appreciate it. It was so good to see you. I hope you enjoyed this. I really do.
Yes, it was fun, and Slava Ukraini.
Heroям slava. Thank you.
Locke, one more thing.
I just want to say thank you to Wally and Alex. I've talked to Alex about this, but I've appreciated these interviews and meeting people like you because it gives me perspective, right? Like I think we need a dose of that in our lives. I mean, I had a conversation the other day with a guy who was angry because I send emails to him on the weekend. I mean, we are so fucked in Canada. If we had combat on our own soil, that's not even like we don't need to go down there. But I think we're very, very lucky to have Ukraine for the rest of the world, and that we couldn't have asked for a better culture of people to be dealing with this. Even though it's horrific, we lucked out that it was Ukraine and the type of people that are there, like Alex and just some of the stories, just unbelievable. Today was amazing. Really appreciate it.
We are lucky to talk about it with the podcast, right? We're lucky to for some people it's no podcast anymore, it's real life, right? So we're lucky. We're lucky as Canadians.
So thank you guys. Thank you for including me, Dean.
Yes. Thanks, guys. Alex, Wally, we'll talk to you soon. Locke, we'll talk to you soon as well. Really appreciate everybody's time today. There you go. That is the crew. That is Alex. That is Wally. That is my friend Lachlan Cross from 957 Cruise FM. Wally News. Don't forget, go to dragonax.io. And make sure you follow my friend Alex De Rebekoff as well. That was incredible. Really appreciate Alex setting that up. Super grateful to Wally for taking so much time with us. I know he's incredibly busy, and Lachlan, of course, he's not busy. He's just got beers to drink, so he was super free. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. Don't forget, you can download everything we do at crier.co. And right now, if you go to the shop, you can check out one of our Stupid People Equals the New Pandemic t-shirts. Help end the pandemic. Buy a t-shirt, $20. It goes to hiring more people to keep an eye on accountable stuff and bring you content like this. So please do that. Also, thanks to our friends at Ed's Fine Imports, his Gitch or our Gitch, GITCH3. That is your promo code. If you go to Ed's Fine Imports, boxer briefs called Gitch. He made them. You can wear them. They got a great pouch in the front, Canadian made, Canadian owned, Canadian operated. Only place you can get them is at edgefindimports.com, so please do so. Also, our friends at Cantork made this possible. These are people that make the best torque wrenches in the world. If you're looking for a torque wrench solution, bolting and fastening solution, doesn't matter, loosening, fastening, bolting solution. You know, the things that are really hard to get open because they're so big. It's like a giant bolt in your nuclear situation, and you're at like literally a nuclear power plant, and you need a torque wrench. These guys will make one for you. They make it for heavy machinery industry around the world, whether it be nuclear, oil, refineries, doesn't really matter. If you have a bolting solution, they have a torque wrench for that bolting solution. Do yourself a favor. Make sure you call my friend Colin. Go to cantork.com for more information today. Have a great day, everybody. Don't forget, download, subscribe, everything to YouTube. Dean Blundell Show on YouTube. Dean Blundell on Dean Blundell Show on YouTube. Crime Media on YouTube as well. You can also find us at it's been a long day. I'm starting to trail. You can also find us anywhere you get your fine podcasts, including Google, Apple, Spotify, etc. So you could rate, subscribe, all that other stuff. I'm going to get out of here. Have a great day, everybody. Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Bye-bye.